Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the shadowy underbelly of ancient Egypt, where the Nile's humid breath clings to your skin like a lover who won't let go. And the dead whisper secrets that could curdle your blood. Did you know that embalmers like you handle over 70 days of rotting flesh per body, inhaling fumes that could sear your lungs, all while society spat on your name for daring to touch the untouchable? What if the chill of a fresh corpse wasn't just cold, but a harbinger of the curses you might unleash if you slipped even once in the ritual? And how many embalmers before you coughed up their lives to natron dust, wondering if the gods truly forgave their unclean hands? Imagine the irony: you preserve kings for eternity, yet your own existence is a grind of filth and fear. Worse than modern gig work, where at least you get tips instead of tomb robbers' threats. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the dim, torchlit chamber of the Pernefer, the house of beauty they call it, with that biting Egyptian sarcasm, where the air hangs heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the sharp bite of palm wine. Your sandals squelching on a floor slick with spilled fluids that no amount of sweeping can ever fully erase. And the first corpse of the day lies before you, a once mighty scribe whose skin already pales like the underbelly of a Nile fish, its chill seeping through the linen shroud straight into your bones, as if the dead man's car is testing your resolve before you even begin, your hands calloused from years of this grim trade. Tremble slightly as you adjust the flickering torchlight, those recurring motifs of flame dancing on damp stone walls, casting elongated shadows that twist like the serpents of Apep, the chaos god who haunts your dreams, reminding you that one wrong move could invite his wrath into this sacred yet suffocating space. You're no high priest. Oh no, just a lowly WTI, an embalmer scraped from the lower rungs of society. Qualifications nothing more than a lifetime of apprenticeship under gruff mentors who coughed natron dust until their lungs gave out. Their titles mere whispers like cutter or salter. Far from the glorified Anubis-masked figures the scrolls romanticize, the irony hits you like a scorpion sting. Historians still debate whether embalmers like you are revered artisans or unclean pariahs, shunned from temples because your touch defiled the living. Yet here you are, entrusted with preserving the pharaoh's favorites for eternity, a task more perilous than wrestling crocodiles in the reed-choked shallows. You circle the body, your nose assaulted by the faint rot already blooming beneath the skin, worse than that time you waited on hold with some bureaucratic nightmare back in whatever modern hell you imagine. Except here there's no escape button, just the relentless humidity pressing in, mutating the torchlight's warmth into a clammy sweat that beads on your forehead and drips into your eyes, stinging like the resins you'll soon apply. With a deep breath that tastes of decay, you don the jackal mask of Anubis, its weight pulling at your neck like an accusation, the god's black fur scratching your cheeks as you mutter the opening incantations, your voice echoing off the low ceiling in a calm, rhythmic chant that belies the empathy swelling in your chest for this poor soul. Once a man with dreams and desires, now reduced to a vessel you must hollow out to appease the gods who demand perfection or damnation. You reach for the obsidian blade, its edge glinting like a predator's tooth under the flickering flames, and make the first incision along the left flank, the skin parting with a wet sigh that sends a shiver down your spine. Blood welling up in a sluggish pool that you mop with linen rags, the fabric already stained from yesterday's labours. As the metallic scent intensifies, mingling with the acrid smoke of the torches, those persistent flames now flickering wildly as if protesting. The violation, you plunge your hands into the cavity, fingers slick with viscera, pulling free the lungs that deflate like punctured wineskins, their spongy texture yielding under your grasp. A factual reminder from ancient text that these organs, vital in life, must be preserved in canopic jars guarded by the sons of Horus, lest the deceased wander breathless in the duat. You set them aside with a sarcastic inner quip. The perks of the job, playing God with someone else's innards, better than flipping burgers in some fast food purgatory, but with way more eternal consequences, and reach for the liver, its heavy, slippery mass resisting your pull. forcing you to wrestle it free amid a gush of fluids that splatter your arms, the warmth contrasting cruelly with the corpse's growing coldness. Historians argue over whether embalmers like you felt honoured or burdened by this intimacy with death. But in this moment, as nausea rises like a crocodile from the depths, you know it's the latter, your stomach churning from the mingled odours of offal and incense, a sensory struggle that mutates the chamber's damp embrace into a suffocating tomb of your own. You pause for a zoom-out poetic breath, gazing at the Nile beyond the workshop's reed door, where the river's eternal flow mirrors the cycle of life and death you serve. A silvery ribbon under the merciless sun that bakes the land like the natron you'll soon pack into this hollow shell. Empathy tugs at you again, this scribe. Perhaps a father, a lover. Now just meat under your knife and you whisper a private prayer. Not the official ones, but a plea for forgiveness if your hands falter. Knowing one slip could invite accusations of desecration from grieving families who view you as a necessary evil, their scorn burning hotter than the desert sands. With a clever commentary to yourself, well, at least it's not as bad as modern taxidermy, where the clients don't come back to haunt you. You continue, extracting the stomach and intestines in a tangle of glistening ropes that slither through your fingers like eels, the sour reek intensifying until it coats your throat, forcing a cough that echoes mockingly in the confined space. The heart remains, that seat of the soul, untouched as per ritual, its faint imagined throb, a psychological chill reminding you that this body once pulsed with life, now entrusted to your unsteady care. You rinse the cavity with palm wine, the fruity sharpness cutting through the gore but doing little to ease the ache in your back from hours bent over this table. A physical event that leaves you wincing, muscles protesting like overworked slaves in the quarries. An absurd historical tidbit floats through your mind. Some embalmers used crocodile dung in their mixtures. A foul ingredient you've avoided today but know awaits in tougher cases. Its earthy stench a danger to your senses and health alike. As you pack the first natron pouches into the abdomen, the salt's gritty bite irritating your skin, cracking open fresh cuts from yesterday's labours. You feel the weight of your lowly status shunned by society, paid in scraps while priests take the glory. Your life a cycle of isolation and peril, where one infected wound from a corpse could end you faster than a pharaoh's whim. The torchlight dims slightly as a draft sneaks in, mutating the shadows into writhing forms that dance like accusing spirits. And you wonder if this scribe's bar is watching, judging your every move. Your ironic aside slips in congratulations. You're the original biohazard worker, minus the hazmat suit and union benefits, and yet, beneath the sarcasm, a deep empathy blooms for all the forgotten embalmers before you, their bones scattered unmarked while the kings they preserved gleam in gold. You seal the incision with resin, its sticky heat burning your fingertips like a brand. The chamber's humidity now a thick fog that blurs your vision, turning the corpse into a hazy silhouette under the flickering flames. As you step back, wiping sweat from your brow with a bloodied rag, the body lies there, eviscerated yet poised for resurrection. A strange visual image of vulnerability wrapped in ritual, its empty eyes staring into the void, sending a psychological chill through you that whispers of your own mortality in this endless dance with death. What horrors await in the drying days ahead, when the natron's bite turns the flesh to leather, and the gods test if your work holds against the rot. You awaken before dawn to the relentless grind of your existence. The question gnawing at your mind, did you know that ancient embalmers like you often toiled for pharaohs who demanded mummies flawless enough to rival the gods, yet paid you in barley rations that barely staved off starvation, with over 70% of your guild succumbing to lung diseases from inhaling natron fumes, their bodies discarded unmarked, while the kings they preserved lounged in golden eternity. The sweltering sand claws at your bare feet like 1,000 tiny scorpions, each grain embedding itself in your calloused soles as you drag the heavy stone slab toward the drying yard, the rough hemp rope biting into your shoulders with a burning friction that mutates yesterday's sweat-soaked tunic into a chafing second skin, the air thick with the dry, acrid dust that coats your throat and makes every breath a laboured rasp tasting of baked earth and despair. Your back screams in protest, muscles knotted like the twisted roots of a papyrus reed, each heave forward a physical event that echoes the stoic drag of Sisyphus but without the myth's poetic justice here. It's just you, a lowly WTI, hauling natron-laden slabs under the pharaoh's insatiable demands. His latest decree for a grander tomb extension crushing your spirit as surely as the weight crushes your spine. Historians still debating whether such labourers were slaves or honoured servants, but in this blistering heat, you know it's the former, your freedom a illusion thinner than the Nile's morning mist. The sun rises like a vengeful Ra, its rays piercing the horizon to bake the desert floor, transforming the recurring motif of flickering torchlight from last night's chamber into a blinding glare that dances off the sand in shimmering waves, mutating shadows into mirages that taunt you with visions of cool riverbanks you'll never rest upon, while the metallic tang on your tongue now from the iron hook you used to lever the slab reminds you of the blood you spilled yesterday, a sensory struggle that blends with the salty sweat streaming into your mouth, making you gag on the irony of preserving the elite while your own body decays alive. You pause for a moment, wiping your brow with a forearm smeared in grit, the empathy welling up for your fellow embalmers scattered across the yard like forgotten offerings, their hunched forms mirroring your own as they salt another corpse. The absurd historical tidbit crossing your mind that some pharaohs insisted on embalming their pets alongside them, cats and falcons mummified with the same care you'd give a vizier. Yet you, the artisan, are treated worse than those sacred beasts, their linen-wrapped forms destined for eternity while your rations spoil in the heat, like a bad joke from the gods. A sarcastic quip bubbles in your thoughts, the glamour of the job, hauling stones heavier than your regrets, worse than lugging groceries up 5 flights in a modern apartment block without an elevator. Except here, the boss could have you flogged for a single complaint, and yet, beneath it, a deep chill settles as you spot the overseer approaching, his whip coiled like a cobra, his demands for faster work echoing the pharaoh's whims that pile upon you like the endless dunes, your spirit fracturing under the weight of knowing this slab isn't just rock, it's the foundation for drying pits where bodies will desiccate for 40 days, each one a reminder of your isolation from family and society, shunned as unclean even by the beggars in Thebes. You heave again, the slab inching forward with a grating scrape that vibrates through your bones, the sand shifting treacherously underfoot to make every step a battle. Your back now a symphony of agony that radiates down your legs, forcing you to grit your teeth against the pain, the wet wool of your tunic sodden from sweat rather than river water clinging like a parasite, its rough weave chafing raw patches on your skin that sting with every movement, mutating the discomfort into a full-body torment that blurs your vision with tears you can't afford to shed. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you glance toward the distant pyramids, those monolithic sentinels rising like jagged teeth against the azure sky, symbols of eternal power built on the broken backs of men like you, their shadows stretching long in the morning light as if mocking the fleeting nature of your toil. The overseer barks orders, his voice a whip crack that startles a flock of ibises from the nearby reeds, their wings flapping in frantic escape while you remain tethered to this drudgery, empathy surging for the young apprentice beside you, his frail frame already buckling under a smaller load, his eyes hollow with the same exhaustion that mirrors your own youth wasted in these sands. You mutter a curse under your breath, tasting the dust it stirs, as the slab finally reaches the pit, tumbling in with a thud that jars your arms. The physical relief momentary before the next demand hits more slabs. More natron, for the pharaoh's cousin felled by a fever, his body awaiting your knife in the house of beauty, the irony twisting like a knife that you're beautifying the dead while your living form erodes, historians arguing over whether embalmers' high mortality came from toxins or overwork, but you feel it in your screaming back, a factual toll of the trade where silica-laden sand scars your lungs as surely as natron preserves flesh. A shocking element creeps in as you spot a scorpion scuttling across the slab's surface, its tail arched in threat, forcing you to stomp it dead with your sandal, the crunch underfoot a sad echo of the fragility you handle daily. The creature's venom a minor peril compared to the pharaoh's caprices that could see you buried alive for delaying a royal mummy. You straighten slowly, vertebrae popping like dry reeds, the heat now a blanket that smothers your breath, mutating the air into a hazy oven where mirages of oasis tempt and deceive, your spirit crushed further by the knowledge that this is no temporary hell. It's your life, cycle after cycle, dragging not just stones, but the weight of an empire's obsession with death, where the living serve as fodder for the afterlife's grandeur. With a clever commentary to lighten the load, think of it as ancient CrossFit, minus the protein shakes and motivational playlists you press on, grabbing another rope for the next slab, the sand's heat radiating up through your feet like coals, the sensory assault unrelenting as sweat pools in your eyes, blurring the yard into a swirl of figures and forms. Yet, in this crushing routine, a psychological chill whispers of rebellion, a forbidden thought that perhaps one day you'll refuse. Let the bodies rot and the pharaoh rage. But for now, you drag onward, the overseer's shadow looming like a vulture, empathy for your brethren the only balm in this sweltering forge of suffering. As the sun climbs higher, baking the world into submission, you wonder if the gods laugh at your plight, their divine demands echoing in the pharaoh's voice, leaving you to ponder the next hall, where the sand's embrace tightens, and your back's screams grow louder in the unrelenting blaze. You hunch over the drying pit, the bitter fumes of natron dust rising like vengeful spirits from the white-crusted crystals you've just shoveled in, each inhale scorching your throat with a gritty burn that triggers a coughing fit so violent it doubles you over. Phlegm speckled with salt flecking your lips as the sacred rituals you've chanted all morning now bind you in a suffocating isolation. The chant's rhythmic echoes fading into the stifling air of the workshop where no one dares approach an embalmer mid-process, lest they share your unclean fate. The natron's acrid bite mutates the recurring torchlight, now a hazy glow filtered through the dust clouds into a choking veil that stings your eyes, turning tears into salty rivulets that carve paths down your dust-caked cheeks. While the metallic tang on your tongue evolves from yesterday's blood to a corrosive edge like biting down on rusted copper, a sensory struggle that leaves your lungs heaving for clean air that doesn't exist in this sealed chamber. The walls dripping with condensation from the Nile's humid breath seeping through cracks like an unwanted intruder. You force yourself upright, hands trembling as you spread another layer of natron over the eviscerated body from Dawn's labor, the crystals crunching under your palms like fragile bones, a physical event that demands precision too little, and the rot festers. Too much, and the flesh shrivels unnaturally, historians debating whether such meticulous salting was a divine art or a desperate bid against the tropics' relentless decay. But in this moment, as coughs rack your frame again, you know it's a curse disguised as duty, your isolation deepened by the priest's edicts that forbid you from temple grounds during these 40 days, leaving you alone with the dead like a guardian of forgotten souls. An absurd historical tidbit nags at you amid the haze some embalmers mixed natron with sawdust from sacred cedars imported from Lebanon, a luxury you can't afford, turning your pits into makeshift graves where the wood's faint resin scent battles the rot but loses every time, your own mixture cheap and caustic, eating at your skin like invisible termites. Sarcasm creeps in with a wry inner twist. Congratulations, you're the original Salt Bae, sprinkling death's preservative like it's gourmet seasoning, worse than slinging fries in a greasy diner where at least the burns come from oil. Not eternal rituals, and yet, beneath it, empathy swells for the body before you. Once a merchant whose laughter filled the markets, now a silent form bloating in the heat, its skin mottling purple and green in sad patches that remind you of your own mortality, the shocking element hitting as a maggot wriggles free from an untreated crease, forcing you to pluck it with tweezers, its squirm between your fingers a psychological chill that whispers of failure, of mummies rejected by Osiris for your oversight. You chant the ritual incantations again, voice hoarse from the dust, invoking Anubis to oversee the desiccation, the words binding you further in isolation as the other embalmers work in distant pits, their coughs a distant chorus mirroring your own, the wet wool of your tunic now dust-encrusted and heavy as chainmail, clinging to your chest with a clammy grip that mutates into a second skin of grime, restricting each breath as if the gods themselves are testing your endurance. In a zoom-out poetic breath, you glance up through the narrow vent to the vast sky above, where vultures circle lazily like omens of the duat, their shadows fleeting across the pit as if judging the balance of life and death you maintain. The endless desert beyond a golden sea that swallows men whole yet spares the pharaohs you preserve. The coughing subsides momentarily, allowing you to pack the natron deeper into the body's cavities. Fingers numb from the cold crystals despite the chamber's swelter, a factual integration of ancient chemistry, where the salt draws out moisture like a thief in the night, preserving for eternity what time would devour, but at the cost of your health, lungs scarred, eyes inflamed, a slow poison that claims more embalmers than tomb collapses ever did. A modern comparison slips in, it's like chain smoking in a sandblaster factory. Except the benefits are eternal job security in the afterlife's underbelly. No retirement plan beyond a shallow grave. You seal the pit with a reed mat, its fibrous weave scratching your arms as you tie it down, the isolation weighing heavier now as the sun peaks, baking the air into a furnace where every inhale brings fresh fumes. Your coughs evolving into deep, rattling hacks that echo off the stone like accusations from the gods. Empathy tugging for your absent family, barred from visiting lest they carry your defilement home, their faces haunting your thoughts like ghosts in the dust. The shocking sadness deepens as you recall a fellow WTI who succumbed last season, his body unembalmed and tossed to the crocodiles for lack of kin. A fate you dread as the natron's bite reminds you of your fragility. The ritual's sacred bind a double-edged sword that elevates the dead while grinding the living to dust. With clever commentary, well, at least the isolation means no awkward small talk. Unlike those endless Zoom calls in some future dystopia, you press on, checking another pit where a week's worth of salting has turned flesh to leather. The body's shrunken form a strange visual image under the muted torchlight, its features frozen in eternal grimace like a warning mask, sending a chill through you that questions if these preserved shells truly reach paradise, or linger trapped, their unrest a mood shift that darkens the chamber as you prepare for the next phase, the fumes lingering like unspoken regrets in the heavy air. You stand before the desiccated husk in the dim recesses of the pernefer, the leathery skin stretched taut over bones like dried papyrus under the relentless pull of natron's embrace. Your trembling hands hovering over the obsidian blade as the question echoes in your mind, did you know that ancient embalmers like you risked divine retribution for every incision? With texts warning that a single slip could unleash the bay's vengeful flight, condemning the soul to wander eternally while your own name was erased from temple records, a fate worse than the oblivion you stave off for the elite. The skin yields under your knife with a brittle crackle, parting like old reed mats baked too long in the sun, the faint resistance sending tremors up your arms, as if the corpse itself resists this final violation. The metallic tang of residual blood dried, but not fully gone, blooming anew on your tongue from the dust-laden air, mingling with forbidden whispers that seem to slither from the chamber's shadowed corners, perhaps the echoes of incantations or the imagined pleas of the dead, binding you in a web of secrecy where one wrong word could brand you a heretic. Your fingers, still gritty from the natron pits, grip the blade tighter to steady the shake, the recurring motif of flickering torchlight now casting jagged patterns across the withered flesh, mutating the shadows into claw-like fingers that reach toward you, while the wet wool of your tunic, dampened afresh by the chamber's perpetual humidity, clings to your back like a shroud, its chill mutating into a clammy fever that heightens every sensation. The sensory struggle of the blade's edge scraping bones, sending vibrations through your palms like the distant rumble of the Nile's floods. You slice deeper along the flank, the leathery texture parting with a whispery tear that exposes the natron-packed cavity beneath. Crystals spilling out like cursed jewels, their sharp edges pricking your skin as you brush them aside. A physical event that demands unwavering focus. Historians debate whether such post-drying incisions were for cosmetic adjustments or to insert protective amulets. But in this stifling space, you know it's both. A desperate bid to perfect the vessel before the priest's inspection. You're trembling a testament to the exhaustion that creeps in after days of isolation, shunned even by the apprentices who fear your touch as much as the gods' disfavour. An absurd historical tidbit surfaces amid the tension. Some embalmers etch tiny spells into the skin's underside. Hidden hieroglyphs meant to ward off tomb robbers, a practice you dare not attempt today lest it be seen as forbidden sorcery. The whispers in your head growing louder as if the deceased scribe's car murmurs accusations of overreach. His preserved form now a canvas for your unsteady art. Sarcasm flickers in your thoughts like the torch flames. Oh, the thrill of being a divine surgeon, carving eternity one shaky cut at a time, worse than trying to thread a needle during an earthquake in some far future workshop, where at least the lights don't sputter and die, and yet, beneath it, empathy surges for this once vital man. His leathery remnants a sad echo of the vibrant life he led, trading scrolls in bustling markets, now reduced to this brittle shell under your blade, the shocking element striking as a sliver of natron embeds in your fingertip, drawing a bead of your own blood that mingles with the corpse's faint residue, a psychological chill racing through you at the intimacy of it, as if his essence contaminates yours, blurring the line between preserver and preserved. You probe the cavity with hooked tools, extracting stray natron clumps that crunch under pressure, the metallic tang intensifying as old fluids reawaken with a sour undernote, your tongue coated as if you've licked rusted bronze, the forbidden whispers evolving into half-heard chants from the outer halls where priests prepare offerings. Their voices are a reminder of your exclusion from those holy rites, bound instead to this grim tableau where every slice risks invoking a Pep's chaos if the alignment falters. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you envision the vast necropolis beyond these walls, pyramids piercing the sky like spears of the gods, their silent vigil over countless mummies a testament to the Empire's obsession with immortality. The desert winds howling as if mourning the living who fuel this deathly machine. The blade slips slightly, nicking the leathery edge and sending a flake of skin fluttering to the floor like a discarded omen, your heart pounding as you steady yourself, the trembling hands now a liability that could cost you everything the Pharaoh's favour, your meagre livelihood, or worse, your soul's passage if accused of desecration. You adjust the torch, its flames sputtering in the humid draught, casting elongated shadows that mutate into spectral forms dancing across the body. The wet walls cling now a suffocating weight that presses on your chest, restricting breaths already laboured from the fume's lingering bite. Empathy deepening for the families who will never know the horrors you endure to grant their loved ones eternity, their grief channeled into gold offerings that line priests' pockets while you scrape by on scraps. A modern comparison eases the tension briefly. It's like being a backroom editor in a Hollywood studio, polishing stars' images while you fade into obscurity. Except here the stars are corpses, and the edits are eternal. You resume the slice, carving space for an amulet of Horus, the blade's path steadying as you whisper your own forbidden prayer, not the sanctioned ones, but a plea for calm amid the whispers that seem to grow, perhaps the wind or the dead's unrest. The metallic tang now a constant companion that sours your spit, forcing you to swallow against the nausea. The leathery skin folds back like ancient parchment, revealing the preserved sinews beneath, a factual marvel of natron's alchemy that turns decay to durability. Yet the trembling returns as fatigue sets in. Your isolation in this chamber a bind tighter than any linen wrap, shunned whispers from the halls mocking your solitude. With clever commentary, think of it as extreme taxidermy, where the client can't complain about the results. Unlike those picky online reviewers, in some digital age you press on, sealing the cut with resin that burns your fingertips anew, the heat contrasting the corpse's chill, empathy tugging at the scribe's hollow eyes that stare blankly. A sad reminder of lives extinguished too soon by fevers or fates you can't control. The forbidden whispers fade as you step back, but the metallic tang lingers, a persistent echo on your tongue that mutates into something almost alive, the chamber's air thickening with unspoken dread. As you wipe the blade clean, its edge glinting under the torchlight like a accusatory eye. You wonder if these whispers are harbingers of greater peril. The leathery form before you, a strange visual image of twisted humanity, its contours warped by your hands, sending a mood shift of unease that darkens the flickering gloom. You kneel beside the eviscerated form in the flickering underbelly of the Pernefer, the slippery organs spilling from the abdominal cavity like eels writhing in a fisherman's net, their glistening surfaces catching the dim torchlight as a wave of nausea crashes over you, bile rising sharp and sour in your throat, while the humid chamber's walls seem to close in, echoing with ancient curses that slither through the air like half-forgotten spells from the Book of the Dead, whispering of retribution for those who mishandle the sacred car. The organ's lungs heavy and deflated, liver slick with congealed fluids slide through your fingers with a viscous squelch, each one resisting your grasp as if clinging to the last vestiges of life. the metallic tang on your tongue now mutating into a coppery bile from the rising vomit you swallow back, mingled with the chamber's oppressive humidity that beads on your skin like the sweat of the damned, while the wet wool of your tunic saturated anew from the splatter hangs heavy and cold against your chest, mutating into a sodden weight that pulls at your every movement, the fabric's chill seeping into your bones like the Nile's undercurrent during flood season. You wrestle the intestines free first, their coiled lengths uncoiling in your hands with a wet, unravelling slither that sends shudders up your arms. The physical event a grueling tug-of-war where one wrong pull could tear the fragile tissues, dooming the mummy to imperfection and inviting the god's wrath. Historians argue over whether such mishaps led to embalmers' executions or mere demotions. But in this dim glow, as nausea peaks and your vision swims, you know the stakes feel like a noose tightening with every slip. The torchlight, recurring and fickle, dances across the organ's glossy surfaces, mutating shadows into writhing serpents that coil like Apep's brood, heightening the sensory struggle as the humid air thickens the sense of decay into a palpable fog. Your breaths shallow to avoid inhaling the full rot. Empathy surging for this poor scribe whose innards you manhandle, once the engines of his breath and digestion, now reduced to slippery burdens you must preserve or discard, the shocking element hitting as a burst of gas escapes the stomach with a foul hiss, the stench exploding like a curse unleashed, forcing you to retch dryly over the stone floor, your stomach heaving in waves that mirror the Nile's turbulent swells. An absurd historical tidbit flickers through the nausea embalmers sometimes used wine-soaked linen to wrap these organs before jarring them, a luxury reserved for nobles, while for commoners like this one, you'd settle for cheap palm fronds. The difference a sad commentary on eternity's class divide, your hands now coated in a slimy film that makes every grip precarious. Sarcasm bubbling up like the bile. Oh, the joy of organ wrestling, like juggling greased pigs at a village fair, worse than handling raw chicken in a modern kitchen where at least you have gloves and a sink. Not this humid hell where the curses echo louder. Perhaps real invocations from priests outside who view your labour as necessary blasphemy. You lift the liver next, its heavy lobe slipping almost from your grasp, forcing a desperate clutch that squishes it slightly, juices oozing between your fingers like accusation, the wave of nausea intensifying until stars dance in your vision, the chamber's humidity pressing in like a living entity, steam rising from the warm organs in the cool underdraft, mutating the air into a miasma that clogs your pores and lungs alike. In a zoom-out poetic breath, you imagine the vast underworld beyond this chamber, the Duat's shadowy realms where these organs must journey intact via canopic jars, the Nile's eternal flow above mirroring the life's essence you hold, a silvery thread connecting mortal toil to divine judgment. The curse's echoes fading into the river's distant roar as if the gods themselves murmur approval or disdain. The intestines tangle around your wrist like a living snare, requiring a firm yank that strains your shoulders. The physical pull echoing the earlier stonehauling but intimate now, visceral. Historians uncertain if embalmers wore protective wrappings on their hands or braved the slime bear, a debate that means nothing as your skin absorbs the chill fluids, turning clammy and pruned like a drowned man's. Empathy deepens for the deceased, his organs once fueling debates in scriptoria or feasts with loved ones, now wrestled into separation by your unwilling hands. The sad irony that you, the unclean one, dictate his afterlife's wholeness, while your own life frays from such labours. A modern comparison eases the quease briefly. It's like dissecting a frog in biology class, but scaled up to human horror and without the formaldehyde to numb the senses. The curse's whispers growing as if the organ separation awakens spectral guardians, a psychological chill that makes your skin crawl despite the heat. You finally free the lungs, their spongy, deflated sacs flopping wetly into the basin, the sound a dull plop that reverberates in the humid confines, the metallic tang now laced with a putrid sweetness from fermenting bile, forcing another nausea wave that bends you double, retching until your eyes water. The wet wools cling, a constant torment that mutates into a feverish itch as humidity breeds unseen moulds on the fabric. With clever commentary, consider it ancient organ donation, except the recipients are jars and the donor can't opt out. You press on, rinsing the slippery masses with palm wine from a nearby ewer, the fruity sharpness cutting the stench but splashing back to soak your arms, the curses echoing anew as if protesting the ritual's intrusion. Perhaps echoes of older embalmers who faltered here, their spirits bound to the chamber like the car they failed. The organs gleam under the torchlight, their slippery sheen a testament to life's fleeting moisture, now destined for drying and jarring. The humid chamber's walls sweating in sympathy, droplets trickling down stone like tears for the dissected. You arrange them in the basin, hands trembling from the wrestle, nausea subsiding to a dull ache in your gut, empathy lingering for the scribe's fragmented essence. Scattered now like his life stories lost to time, the ancient curses fade to a low hum, but the humid air thickens further, pregnant with unspoken threats. The organs' glistening forms a strange visual image of vulnerability laid bare, their coils and lobes twisted like forgotten offerings, sending a mood shift of dread that questions if these echoes are warnings of your own unravelling in this endless cycle of separation and curse. You plunge your hands deeper into the scribe's hollowed cavity under the wavering torchlight of the Pernepher, the slippery organs shifting beneath your probing fingers like elusive Nile perch in murky depths. Their gelatinous forms defying your grip as a fresh wave of nausea surges up from your gut, twisting like a coiled asp ready to strike, while the humid chamber amplifies ancient curses that seem to reverberate from the stone walls themselves. Low murmurs invoking Set's chaos, or Amit's judgment for those who falter in this sacred desecration. The words curling around your ears like smoke from incense long extinguished. The lungs come first this time, their spongy texture now bloated from early decay, slipping through your grasp with a wet suck that echoes in the confined space, forcing you to chase them with hooked bronze tools that clink against bone. The metallic tang on your tongue evolved from bile's sour bite now laced with the ferrous edge of the instruments, bitter and unyielding, as if you've bitten into the earth itself, while the wet wool of your tunic, drenched from the organ fluid splash, clings to your torso with a sodden insistence that mutates into a chilling second skin, wicking the humidity's moisture to create rivulets that trickle down your back like the tears of condemned souls. You wrestle the lungs free at last, their weight surprising in your palms as air pockets collapse with faint pops. The physical event a grueling extraction that strains your wrists and forearms. Muscles burning from the awkward angles required in this dim glow, historians ponder whether embalmers use specialized hooks, forged in Thebes' forges, or improvised from fishing gear. But in this stifling haze, as nausea crests again and forces a gag you stifle with gritted teeth, you know it's whatever scrap metal survives the corrosion of constant use, the curse's echoes growing louder as if protesting the violation. Perhaps spectral remnants of past UTI who botched this step and paid with their lives. The torchlight flickers erratically now, fueled by cheap tallow that spits and hisses in the humidity, mutating shadows into grotesque dancers that leap across the organ's glistening surfaces, heightening the sensory struggle as the chamber's moist air thickens the sense of viscera to a cloying fog that coats your lungs with each inhale. Your breaths ragged and shallow to fend off the full assault, empathy welling up unexpectedly for the scribe whose body you invade. His lungs, once drawing breath for scholarly debates or lovers' whispers, now wrestled into separation by your calloused hands. The shocking element erupting as fluid spurts from a punctured lobe, splattering your face with warm droplets that sting your eyes like accusatory tears, blinding you momentarily in the dim light and sending nausea into overdrive, your stomach roiling like the Nile during a storm, forcing you to pause and retch into a corner basin, the acrid burn in your throat a punishment from the gods for daring this intimacy with death. An absurd historical tidbit pierces the haze embalmers occasionally preserved organs in wine infused with myrrh, a ritual for the wealthy that turned the jars into aromatic treasures, but for this humble scribe, you'd use plain natron packs, the difference a cruel jest on social strata even in the afterlife, your slippery fingers fumbling now as the humidity slicks everything, curses whispering anew as if the Duat's guardians disapprove of your economy, sarcasm surfaces amid the quee's bravo. You're the ultimate gut-wrencher, like a chef prepping offal for a feast no one wants, worse than dissecting roadkill in some backwoods lab where at least the air conditioning dulls the stench. Not this humid tomb, where every breath invites more torment and yet, beneath it, a deep chill settles as the heart remains untouched nearby, its faint outline a psychological anchor reminding you that mishandling these could doom the souls weighing against Mat's feather, your own car trembling at the thought of eternal unrest if you fail. You turn to the liver next, its heavy lobes sliding out with a reluctant slurp that vibrates through your arms. The organ's surface slick as oiled leather under the torchlight's mutable glow. The wet wools cling now, a feverish burden that itches where fluids have soaked through, mutating discomfort into raw irritation as humidity breeds unseen irritants on your skin, the wave of nausea ebbing only to surge back as the liver's bitter scent, bile-laced and pungent, wafts up, forcing another dry heave that racks your frame like the shudders of a fevered dreamer lost in the duat's labyrinths. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you glimpse the chamber as a microcosm of the cosmos, the organs scattered like dislodged stars in Ra's night sky, the Nile's humid breath a reminder of the river's life-giving flood that mirrors this destructive preservation. Curses fading into the water's distant lap as if the gods weigh mercy against necessity in their eternal balance. The intestines follow, a tangled mass that uncoils endlessly in your hands, requiring a firm pull that strains your back anew, the physical tug echoing earlier labours but intimate here. Visceral threads slipping like eels through your fingers, historians uncertain if embalmers recited specific spells during extraction to appease the organ's spirits. A debate that feels moot as nausea peaks and you nearly drop the coil, steadying just in time to avoid catastrophe. The ancient curses swelling in volume as if sensing your frailty. Perhaps echoes of rituals botched by predecessors whose names were stricken from records for such lapses. Empathy deepens for the scribe. His intestines, once processing feasts of bread and beer shared with kin, now wrestled into jars by your unsteady grasp. The sad irony that you, the unclean, dictate his bodily resurrection while your own form rebels against the task. Nausea, a constant companion that twists your insides in cruel mimicry. A modern comparison offers fleeting relief. It's like untangling Christmas lights soaked in oil, but with eternal souls on the line instead of holiday cheer. The humid chamber's walls sweating in sympathy, droplets plinking into basins like timed accusations. You finally secure the stomach, its bloated form deflating with a sigh as you lift it free. The slippery battle won, but at the cost of your composure. Nausea subsiding to a dull throb as you rinse the organs in palm wine, the fruity tang cutting the rot but splashing back to drench your arms. Curses whispering on, as if the gods test your resolve with every echo. With clever commentary, consider it organ origami, folding life's mess into neat jars. Unlike those chaotic junk drawers in everyday homes where nothing curses back, you arrange them in canopic vessels. The falcon-headed kebasenwef for intestines, baboon-headed happy for lungs, each lid clicking shut with finality, the humid air thickening further as torchlight dims, mutating the scene into a shadowy ritual where nausea lingers like a ghost. Empathy for the hollowed body before you, a quiet ache amid the curses fade. The organs rest now, preserved for judgment, their slippery sheen dulled by natron dust, a strange visual image of life's core extracted and contained, their forms coiled in jars like captured serpents, sending a mood shift of uneasy triumph that questions if these echoes foretell your own unravelling in the humid depths. You hover over the scribe's emptied shell in the oppressive gloom of the pernefer, the cavity yawning like a black maw hungry for the stinging resins you've prepared in a clay bowl nearby, their viscous amber glow catching the torchlight as the fumes already nip at your nostrils with a sharp, acrid bite that promises pain. While the injustice of your lowly status crashes down heavier than the dead weight before you, WTI scorned by society yet burdened with their eternal fates. The gods' cruel jest that you preserve kings while begging for scraps, your fingers trembling as you dip them into the molten mix, the heat searing your skin like the brand of a thief caught in the pharaoh's granary. The resins bubble and pop softly in the bowl, their stinging vapours rising to assault your eyes, watering them until tears blur the edges of the cavity, the metallic tang on your tongue now mutating from organ's residue into a resinous bitterness that coats your mouth like forbidden honey laced with venom, while the wet wool of your tunic, still sodden from the extraction splatter, hangs limp and heavy on your frame, mutating into a stifling armour that traps the chamber's humidity against your skin, turning every shift a chafing reminder of your station, the fabric's damp chill contrasting cruelly with the resin's burn as you scoop a handful, the gooey mass scorching your fingertips instantly, forcing a hiss through your teeth as blisters begin to form, The physical event, a torturous packing where you must force the stinging substance into every crevice of the cavity, sealing the voids left by removed organs to ward off decay's insidious creep. Historians debate whether these resins were sourced from distant cedars of Lebanon or local acacias, a luxury trade that enriched merchants while you, the applicator, bear the burns without balm or recognition, your lowly status a chain heavier than the lead weight some embalmers use to press mummies flat, society viewing you as untouchable filth, barred from festivals and feasts where the elite you preserve revel in life. You press the resin deeper, fingers throbbing with each push, the stinging heat radiating up your arms like fire ants marching under your skin, the injustice weighing on your chest as you recall the priest's disdainful glances earlier, their linen robes pristine while yours reeks of death, they who chant from afar and claim the glory of resurrection, leaving you to this burning toil, empathy surging for the scribe whose hollowed form you fill, once a man of letters perhaps dreaming of ascension, now stuffed like a festival goose by hands society deems cursed. The shocking element striking as a glob of resin splatters onto your forearm, sizzling against flesh and raising an angry welt that pulses with raw agony, forcing you to bite back a cry lest the overseer hear and dock your rations. Your status so low that even complaints invite flogging, heavier than the dead silence that mocks your suffering. The torchlight wavers in the draught, its flames now tinged with the resin's smoky haze, mutating shadows into swirling veils that dance across the cavity's walls like accusing spectres from the duat, heightening the sensory struggle as the stinging fumes choke your breaths, each inhale a laboured gasp that burns your throat. The wet walls cling, a constant torment that itches where resin droplets have hardened into crusty spots, mutating discomfort into a full-body blaze that blurs the line between external heat and internal fury at your plight. An absurd historical tidbit burns through the pain some embalmers mixed resins with beeswax for nobles, creating aromatic seals that perfume the mummy like divine incense. But for this scribe, you'd use the cheap, stinging variety harvested from thorny bushes along the Nile, the difference a stark injustice where the poor rot faster in eternity. Your fingers now raw and blistered from the packing, each press into the cavity a stab of fire that weighs heavier than the moral load of your status, shunned by villagers who cross the street at your approach, their whispers branding you a harbinger of death, while the pharaoh you serve lounges in opulence, his mummies gleaming in gold you'll never touch. Sarcasm flares like the resin's heat, splendid. You're the original hot glue gunner, sealing souls with stuff that could double as torture paste, worse than spilling coffee on your lap in a rushed morning commute where at least you get sympathy, not scorn from a society that reveres the dead more than the living hands that tend them. And yet, beneath it, a deep psychological chill creeps in as the cavity fills, the resin hardening into a glossy seal that entombs the voids forever, empathy deepening for all the unnamed WTI before you, their burns unhealed, statuses so low their graves go unmarked while the preserved elite bask in afterlife splendor, the injustice a yoke that bends your spirit lower than your bowed head over this task. You smooth the resin surface with a spatula, the tool's edge scraping against the preserved walls with a gritty rasp that vibrates through your blistered fingers, the stinging subsiding to a throbbing ache as humidity cools the surface too quickly, forcing hasty adjustments lest cracks form and invite rot's return. The torchlight's mutable glow reflecting off the amber fill like trapped sunlight in a tomb, casting eerie highlights that mutate the cavity into a glowing abyss. The wet wool's weight now a sodden anchor that pulls at your posture, exacerbating the burned sting with every lean. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you envision the vast hierarchy of the Nile's realm, pharaohs atop pyramids of power while you dwell in the muddy foundations. The resin's sting, a microcosm of societal burns that scar the lowly. The river's flow beyond these walls are indifferent witness to injustices etched deeper than any hieroglyph. Curses perhaps woven into the very air by forgotten souls who toiled similarly. The packing complete, you withdraw your hands, fingers curled in pain, the resin's residue cracking on your skin like dried mudflats, a factual nod to ancient recipes that blended frankincense for the elite, elevating their mummies to aromatic divinity, while yours remain basic barriers against time. Your status is injustice heavier now as you ponder the scribe's family. Wealthy enough for this, but blind to your sacrifices. Their offerings going to priests who never feel the burn. A modern comparison offers bitter solace. It's like being the underpaid line cook in a Michelin star kitchen, scorching your hands for dishes the chefs claim credit for. The humid chamber's walls sweating in mockery, droplets hissing as they hit the hot bowl. You flex your blistered fingers, the stinging of persistent fire that weighs on your every thought, empathy for the dead lighter than the living burden of your rank, the resin's seal hardening into permanence while your own wounds fester untended. With clever commentary envy the dead. They get the spa treatment. You get the third-degree burns without the hazard pay, you step back. But the injustice lingers, a heavier pall than the chamber's gloom. The cavities filled form a strange visual image of forced wholeness, its amber gleam like imprisoned fire, sending a mood shift of resentful weariness that questions if the gods' scales ever balance for the likes of you in this burning hierarchy. You stand before the scribe's hollowed form in the flickering underbelly of the Pernepher, the question burning in your mind like the resins you're about to apply. Did you know that ancient embalmers like you often packed cavities with mixtures so caustic they could blister skin in seconds? With records showing that up to half of your guild suffered chronic burns, leading to infections that claimed lives faster than Nile fevers, all while priests pocketed the praise for the mummies you scarred yourself to perfect. A custom where the lowly bore the pain for the elite's eternity. The resins simmer in a shallow bronze basin over a low flame, their viscous amber bubbling with a menacing pop that releases stinging vapors straight into your face, the acrid sharpness invading your nostrils like invisible needles, forcing your eyes to water as you dip your fingers tentatively, the heat searing the tips instantly, raising angry red welts that throb with each heartbeat, while the metallic tang on your tongue, mutated from earlier bile into a fiery resinous bite, coats your mouth as if you've swallowed embers from Ra's chariot. The wet wool of your tunic, still heavy from the organ extraction's damp residue, clinging to your arms like a sodden curse that amplifies every sting, its fibers trapping the humidity's moisture to create a steamy barrier where sweat and resin mingle into a blistering paste against your skin. You scoop a handful of the stinging goo, the resin's heat penetrating deeper into your flesh, fingers burning as if plunged into molten sand. The physical event a torturous packing where you must force this fiery sealant into the scribe's abdominal void, sealing the emptiness left by removed organs to prevent rot's insidious return. Historians debate whether these resins were purely preservative or imbued with magical properties to bind the carl. Our uncertainty that means little as the burn intensifies, your lowly status weighing heavier than the dead weight before you. Society viewing embalmers as pariahs, unclean handlers of filth barred from temples and marriages among the higher castes, your labour essential yet reviled, the injustice a yoke that bends your spirit as you press the resin inward, the cavity's walls yielding with a sticky squelch that echoes in the humid chamber, empathy surging for the scribe whose body you invade once more, once a man of ink and papyrus perhaps dreaming of legacy, now a hollow vessel filled by hands society deems unworthy, the shocking element erupting as a bubble in the resin bursts against your palm, splattering hot droplets that sizzle on your skin, raising fresh blisters that pulse with raw agony, forcing a muffled groan through your lips lest the priest outside hear and deem you weak. Your status so low that even pain must be silent, heavier than the scribe's preserved silence that mocks your suffering from the slab. The torchlight, recurring and treacherous, reflects off the resin's glossy surface, mutating shadows into writhing tendrils that coil around your arms like judgmental serpents from the duat, heightening the sensory struggle as the stinging fumes choke your breaths, each inhale a laboured rasp that scorches your throat. The wet walls cling now a feverish torment that itches where resin has seeped through, mutating discomfort into inflamed welts that blur the line between external burn and internal rage at your plight, the injustice of packing nobility's dead with substances that scar your living flesh, while merchants trade the same resins for profit without a single welt, your fingers now throbbing drums of pain as you push deeper, the cavity filling with the amber seal that hardens too quickly in the humidity, requiring hasty smoothing lest cracks invite decay's whisper. An absurd historical tidbit pierces the haze embalmers sometimes infused resins with crocodile fat for waterproofing. a foul addition that turned the mixture into a greasy inferno on skin. Reserved for pharaohs while you endure the basic bruise sting, the difference a stark injustice where the elite's mummies gleam eternally while your hands scar for their sake. Society shunning you as if your burns mark you cursed. Heavier than the dead's linen wraps you'll soon apply. Empathy deepening for all the forgotten Dabyad whose fingers twisted into useless claws from years of this. Their status is so low their families abandoned them to avoid the taint. The sad irony that you grant immortality to others while your own body erodes in obscurity. Blisters forming bubbles that pop under pressure, sending fresh waves of sting that make your vision swim. Sarcasm flares like the resin's heat marvelous. You're the ancient equivalent of a welder without gloves, forging afterlives with fire that bites back. Worse than burning your hand on a hot stove in a rushed kitchen where at least apologies follow, not the priest's indifferent chants from afar that claim credit for your agony, and yet, beneath it, a psychological chill settles as the cavity seals, the resin hardening into a glossy barrier that entombs the voids forever. Empathy for the scribe, a quiet ache amid the burn's roar, his hollowed form now stabilized by your sacrifice. Society blind to the cost, the injustice a heavier pull than the chamber's gloom, where torchlight dims under the fume's haze. You withdraw your hands, fingers curled in agony, the resin's crust cracking on your skin like baked clay under the sun's hammer. A factual nod to recipes that blended myrrh for the wealthy, elevating their seals to fragrant divinity while yours remain basic burns. Your status is weight-crushing as you ponder the scribe's kin, offering gold to Anubis while you beg for aloe scraps to soothe your wounds. The humidity's embrace turning the air into a steamy forge that amplifies every throb. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you envision the Nile's hierarchy mirrored in this act, pharaohs afloat on golden barges while you sink in the mud of labor. The resin's sting, a symbol of flames that forge empires on the backs of the burned. The rivers flow indifferent to injustices carved deeper than any tomb relief. Whispers of curses perhaps from predecessors, whose burns went unhealed in silent protest. The packing complete, you flex your blistered digits, the stinging a persistent inferno that weighs on your soul. Empathy lighter than the living burden of your rank, the resin's seal gleaming like trapped fire in the cavity. A strange visual image of forced preservation, its amber depths swirling with bubbles like imprisoned breaths, sending a mood shift of bitter resignation that questions if the gods ever repay the lowly for their scorching devotion in this unequal dance with death. You lean over the scribe's preserved husk in the sweltering confines of the Per Nefer, the endless linen strips uncoiling from the massive spool like serpents shedding their skins, each yard a testament to the 40 days of desiccation now complete. As the question coils in your mind, did you know that ancient embalmers like you wrapped bodies in up to 400 yards of linen per mummy, sourced from temple looms where weavers toiled under pharaoh's quotas? Yet for every flawless wrap, dozens of embalmers suffered palm blisters that festered into scars, their hands ruined while the elite they swathed sailed smoothly into the afterlife. A labour where one flawed fold could invite accusations of sabotage and a flogging that left men crippled. The linen's coarse weave rasps against your already blistered palms, each pull sending fresh stings through the raw flesh where resins from earlier packing have cracked and peeled. The relentless desert heat pouring through the chamber's narrow vents like Ra's unforgiving breath, baking the air into a shimmering haze that mutates the torchlight, once flickering shadows into a blinding glare reflected off the white strips, while the metallic tang on your tongue evolves from resin's bite into a dusty dryness from inhaling linen fibers that float like spectral dust motes, coating your mouth as if you've swallowed the sands themselves. The wet wool of your tunic now baked stiff by the heat crackling against your sweat-slicked skin, mutating into a rigid shell that chafes with every twist, the humidity's remnants turning to steam under the sun's assault. You begin the wrapping at the feet, fingers fumbling to secure the first strip around the desiccated toes, the linen's texture grating like sandpaper on your blisters, each loop a physical event that demands precision too loose, and the form unravels in the tomb, too tight, and the preserved skin cracks like old pottery. Historians arguing over whether these wraps were purely protective or inscribed with hidden spells to bind the bay. a debate irrelevant as heat waves distort your vision, sweat dripping into your eyes to sting like natron remnants, your lowly status amplified in this solitary toil, shunned by society as an unclean wrapper of rot, yet burdened with ensuring the scribe's eternity, the injustice heavier than the spool's weight that drags at your shoulders, priests claiming credit for the ritual while you blister in obscurity, empathy welling for the scribe whose rotting form once vital flesh now lies rigid and shrunken, his decay halted but his dignity stripped layer by layer under your hands, the shocking element surging as a blister bursts under the linen's pull, oozing clear fluid that soaks the strip and forces a wince, pain lancing up your arm like a scorpion's tail, your status so low that no healer tends your wounds, heavier than the endless coils that seem to multiply with each turn. The desert heat intensifies, seeping through the stone like molten bronze, mutating the chamber into an oven where every breath scorches your lungs. The torchlight's glare now a hazy veil that dances across the linen's white expanse, heightening the sensory struggle as blisters throb in rhythm with your heartbeat, palms raw and weeping under the relentless friction, the wet wool's stiffness cracking at the seams to reveal chafed skin beneath, mutating discomfort into a full-body blaze that blurs focus, the endless wrapping a cycle of loop and tuck that winds around legs, torso, arms, each revolution grinding the linen's weave deeper into your wounds, society blind to your sacrifice, viewing you as a defiler while the mummies you create become treasures in tombs guarded by spells you can't afford to miscast. An absurd historical tidbit pierces the haze embalmers sometimes use linen dyed with saffron for royals, turning wraps into golden shrouds that gleamed in eternity. But for this scribe, plain coarse strips suffice. The difference, a cruel jest on class where the poor's mummies fray faster. Your blisters forming fresh bubbles that pop with each pull, the pain weighing heavier than the dead silence, empathy deepening for forgotten WTI whose palms twisted into claws from years of this. Their status is so low, families disowned them to escape the taint. The sad irony that you cloak the dead in purity while your hands bleed impurity, blisters a badge of your invisibility in the Empire's grand narrative. Sarcasm flares amid the throb splendid. You're the original gift wrapper from hell, bundling rot for the gods' party. Worse than paper cuts from holiday frenzy and some festive future where at least bandages are free. Not scavenged from scrap linen that echoes your own wrapping woes, and yet, beneath it, a psychological chill settles as the wrap reaches the scribe's face, his features muffled under layers. Empathy, a quiet ache for the man whose eyes you cover last, once gazing at stars or lovers, now eternally veiled by your blistered labour, the desert heat pressing in like judgment, mutating air into a suffocating blanket that saps your strength, the metallic tang now a parched dryness that cracks your lips. You secure the arms across the chest in the classic pose, linen rasping over the preserved skin with a dry whisper, the physical toil straining your back as you lean in, blisters screaming with each knot tied, the torchlight's mutable glare casting elongated forms that twist like accusing fingers from the duat. The wet walls crackle a constant irritant that weighs on your posture, exacerbating the palm's fire with every lean, the endless strips seeming to multiply as if cursed by Thoth himself. Society's scorn a heavier burden than the spool's dwindling but infinite coils. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you envision the vast linen fields along the Nile, weavers' looms clacking like fate's metronome, their threads binding the Empire's dead in white eternity while you, the final artisan, pay with flesh. The desert's heat a forge that tempers mummies but breaks the makers, whispers of wind through vents like sighs from overlooked souls. The wrapping nears completion, layers building into a cocoon of white, a factual layer of ancient craft where amulets are tucked between folds, scarabs for rebirth, eyes of Horus for protection, your blisters hindering the placement, pain a persistent weight that slows your pace, the humidity's steam turning the chamber into a misty veil where heat and hurt blend. Your status is injustice, a yoke that bends you lower. Priests are waiting the finished product to bless what your blood has built. A modern comparison offers grim humour. It's like gift wrapping with barbed wire, the endless tedium blistering your soul as much as skin. Unlike online shopping where tape doesn't draw blood, the relentless heat baking your resolve into brittle resolve. You tie the final knot at the head, fingers numb from the throb, the stinging of fading fire that weighs on your every nerve, empathy lighter than the living grind of your rank, the linen's white expanse gleaming in the glare like a shrouded phantom, with clever commentary. Congratulations, you've mummified another. Your palms the real casualties in this wrapping war. You step back, but the blisters pulse on, a heavier reminder than the mummy stillness. The form's bandaged contours a strange visual image of concealed decay, its layers rippling like waves in the heat haze, sending a mood shift of exhausted dread that questions if these endless strips bind only the dead, or your fate as well in this blistering cycle. You emerge from the Pernefer's stifling depths into the blinding midday glare of the necropolis courtyard, the wrapped mummy cradled in a crude sledge behind you, like a silent accusation dragged through the dust. The question clawing at your weary mind, did you know that ancient embalmers like you faced not just the gods' judgment, but the raw fury of grieving families, with scrolls recounting cases where relatives accused WTI of botched rituals leading to public floggings, or even ritual drownings in the Nile, all because a single linen fold or misplaced amulet could doom their loved one's Kai to eternal wandering. A peril where your lowly craft turned kin into vengeful foes faster than a scorpion strike. The courtyard's air hangs thick with the scent of myrrh incense from nearby tombs, but it can't mask the underlying rot wafting from your sledge. The metallic tang on your tongue mutated from linen dust into a coppery sharpness from the bloodied tools you hastily wiped, biting sharper as you swallow against the dryness, while the wet wool of your tunic, baked stiff by the desert sun, now cracks and flakes at the seams like shedding snakeskin, mutating into a brittle armor that digs into your blistered shoulders with every heave of the sledge. The humidity's remnants evaporating into a steamy haze that clings to your skin, turning sweat into salty rivulets that sting your eyes like accusations unspoken. You pull the sledge toward the waiting family clustered under a ragged palm shade, their faces etched with grief's raw edges, widow veiled in black linen, sons with clenched fists, daughters weeping softly, their eyes locking onto you with a mix of desperation and disdain, the physical event unfolding as the widow steps forward first, her voice cracking like thunder in the stifling heat. You defiler! Did you honor his car, or did your unclean hands curse him to the void? Her words stinging like scorpion bites, lancing through the air to pierce your chest. Historians noting how such accusations often stemmed from superstitions, where embalmers were blamed for post-wrapping omens like sudden sandstorms or vulture sightings. Your status so lowly that defending yourself invites further scorn, the injustice swelling as you bow your head, palms throbbing from the morning's wraps, empathy flooding for these mourners whose pain mirrors your own hidden wounds, yet twisted against you as the convenient target, the shocking element erupting as the elder son lunges forward, grabbing your arm with a grip like iron pincers, his breath hot and foul with grief's bile. Show us the wraps if there's a flaw. By Anubis, we'll drag you to the river ourselves, or forcing you to unveil a corner of the linen, the white fabric gleaming innocently under the sun's glare, but their eyes hunt for imperfections like hawks on prey. The stifling tomb air, though now open courtyard closing in with the crowd's murmurs, mutating the heat into a pressure cooker where every breath feels laboured. The torchlight absent, but its memory lingers in the sun's relentless blaze that casts long shadows like accusing fingers pointing at your form. You steady the sledge, fingers aching as you peel back a layer to reveal the amulet placements, the metallic tang intensifying as dust from the wraps coats your lips anew, the wet wool's brittle shell cracking further with your movements, sending flakes drifting like ash from a funeral pyre, the sensory struggle heightening as scorpion-like stings from their words burrow deeper, not physical venom but emotional barbs that twist in your gut, reminding you of your isolation shunned by society, now cornered by those you serve, the grieving family's wrath a storm that builds with each inspection, the widow's tears falling like accusations onto the linen, empathy deepening for her loss, a husband gone to fever, his body your canvas, yet she sees only potential desecration in your hands, the sad irony that you, who wrestled his organs and sealed his eternity, become the villain in their mourning tale, heavier than the sledge's drag that strains your back amid the confrontation. The younger daughter sobs louder, pointing at a perceived crease in the wrap. It's uneven, you've doomed him. her voice a wail that echoes off the tomb walls, stinging like a scorpion's tail whipped in fury. The crowd of onlookers, other families, idle priests murmuring agreement, their gazes burning hotter than the desert sands underfoot. Historians chronicling how such wrath often led to embalmers fleeing villages or facing mob justice. Your status rendering you defenseless. No pharaoh's guard for the unclean. The physical pull of the sledge now a futile anchor as the sun yanks it closer, inspecting with rough hands that threaten to unravel your work, the stifling air thickening with their collective breath, mutating into a cloud of suspicion that chokes your words as you mutter defenses. The gods guided my hands. The rituals were pure, but they fall on deaf ears, sarcasm flickering in your thoughts, like a mirage-splendid reception. Your masterpiece critiqued by amateurs sharper than any blade, worse than posting art online in some digital realm where trolls sting without consequence. At least there you could log off, not stand blistering under this sun while accusations fly. You kneel to adjust the wrap, palms protesting with fresh throbs as linen rasps against blisters. The metallic tang now a gritty swallow from dust kicked up by their shuffling feet, the wet wool's flakes scattering like confetti from a cursed festival. The scorpion stings of their words evolving into a barrage, the widow's plea turning venomous. If his bar wanders, your blood will answer empathy, clashing with resentment for these kin who grieve blindly, ignoring your sacrifices, the shocking sadness welling as you spot a genuine flaw, a tiny tear from the sun's rough handling, forcing hasty repairs under their glare, pain lancing your fingers like fresh bites, the injustice peaking as a priest intervenes not to defend but to mediate, claiming oversight while you bear the brunt, heavier than the mummy's weight that now feels like your own burial shroud. The torchlight's absence leaves the sun's glare to mutate shadows into harsh outlines of the family's forms, towering like judgmental obelisks, the sensory assault of heat and stings blending into a dizzying whirl where breaths come short. The stifling tomb-air courtyard or not pressing like a lid on a sarcophagus, mutating openness into confinement, the grieving wrath a cycle that mirrors the Nile's floods, destructive yet inevitable. Empathy, a quiet undercurrent for their loss amid your peril, the sad element deepening as the daughter collapses in sobs, her pain a mirror to your hidden scars, society pitting mourner against maker in this dance of death. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you see the necropolis as a vast chessboard of grief, families pawns in the gods' game where embalmers like you are the sacrifice pieces, the desert heat, an indifferent player that scorches all equally, winds whispering accusations from tombs long sealed, scorpion shadows scuttling across sands like fleeting regrets. The priest nods approval at last, but the family's glares linger, stings that burrow deep, a factual echo of rituals where satisfaction required offerings you never receive. Your status is weight-crushing as you drag the sledge onward, palms bleeding anew under the linen's remnants, the humidity's haze lifting slightly, but leaving the air heavy with unresolved wrath. A modern comparison bites like the accusations, it's like customer service hell. Fielding complaints for a product you slaved over, worse than retail returns where at least refunds don't threaten your life. The stifling air cooling fractionally as shade beckons, but the scorpion stings of their words pulse on. You secure the sledge in the tomb's antechamber, fingers numb from the ordeal, the injustice a heavier chain than any wrap. The family's retreating forms a strange visual image of shadowed silhouettes against the sun's blaze, their hunched grief like vultures departing a feast, sending a mood shift of hollow relief tinged with dread that questions if tomorrow's families will bring sharper stings in this endless tomb of accusations. You stand in the shadowed threshold of the scribe's family tomb, the wrapped mummy propped against the sledge like a silent sentinel in the stifling tomb air that presses down with the weight of centuries-old dust and incense. The question slithering through your mind like a hidden asp. Did you know that ancient embalmers like you were often dragged before village councils by enraged kin, with papyri detailing accusations of soul theft leading to stonings, or forced labour in the quarries, where one family's grief could unravel your life faster than a poorly tied linen knot? All because a dream omen or a vulture's shadow convinced them your hands had cursed their dead. The air inside the tomb hangs thick and unmoving, laced with the faint rot of older burials that seeps from cracked sarcophagi, mingling with the sharp tang of fresh myrrh offered by the family clustered before you, the widow's eyes red-rimmed daggers, the son's fists clenched like coiled cobras. daughters whispering prayers that sound more like indictments, their collective gaze stinging your skin like scorpion bites, each accusatory stare pricking deeper than the blisters on your palms from the endless wrapping, while the metallic tang on your tongue mutated from linen dust into a venomous sharpness, from the bile of swallowed retorts bites back as you force a bow, the wet wool of your tunic, now crusty with dried sweat and resin flakes, rasping against your chafed back like a scorpion's exoskeleton, mutating into a prickly barrier that amplifies the tomb's stifling heat. Humidity trapped in the underground vault turning breaths into laboured gasps that echo off the painted walls depicting Osiris's judgment, walls that seem to lean in closer with every hostile word. You present the mummy with a gesture of deference, the physical event unfolding as the eldest son steps forward, his voice booming in the confined space like thunder trapped in a jar. "You wretch! Did your filthy touch corrupt his Beya? We've dreamed of shadows prove it's not your doing." The accusation lancing through you like a scorpion's tail whipped in fury, forcing you to unveil the head wrappings slightly to reveal the amulet placements, your fingers trembling from residual burns as linen whispers against skin. Historians uncertain if such family inspections were ritual courtesy or veiled threats to ensure quality. A debate that fades in this moment as sweat beads on your brow, stinging your eyes like additional bites, your lowly status rendering you voiceless. A mere tool in their grief's arsenal, the injustice swelling as they prod the wraps with rough fingers, risking tears in the linen you bled to perfect, empathy flooding for their pain a husband, father lost to the fever's grip yet twisted against you as the easy scapegoat, the shocking element surging as the widow collapses to her knees, wailing. If he wanders the duat lost, your blood will feed Amit, her tears splashing onto the stone floor like venom droplets, the family's wrath a storm that engulfs you, stings multiplying as sons mutter curses invoking Set's chaos, daughters crossing arms in protective wards as if your presence alone invites evil, the stifling tomb air thickening with their sobs and shouts, mutating into a pressure that squeezes your chest, breaths shallow to avoid inhaling their anguish-laced incense. You murmur defences. The rituals were pure, Anubis guided my hands, but the words dissolve in the haze, scorpion-like stings of their glares burrowing deeper. Not physical wounds, but emotional barbs that twist in your gut, reminding you of your isolation shunned by society, now trapped in this vault where the dead outnumber the living, the painted wall's eyes, Osiris, Anubis. Thoth, seeming to judge you alongside the family, the torchlight absent here but sunlight filtering through the entrance, mutating shadows into elongated forms that crawl across the mummy like accusatory fingers, heightening the sensory struggle as the tomb's cool dampness clashes with the heat of their fury. Wet wool's crust flaking off in the scuffle as a sun shoves you lightly, the contact stinging your blistered arms like fresh bites, empathy clashing with resentment for these kin who grieve blindly, ignoring your sacrifices in the Pernifer's depths, the sad irony that you, who wrestled his organs and sealed his eternity, become the monster in their mourning narrative, heavier than the sledge's drag that now feels like chains binding you to their verdict, the accusations evolving into a barrage, the widow's plea turning venomous. Show the heart scarab if it's flawed, will see you scourged, forcing you to adjust the chest wrappings under their scrutiny, palms protesting with throbs as linen rasps against wounds, pain lancing like scorpion tails embedded in flesh, the stifling air closing in like a sarcophagus lid, mutating openness into confinement, where every echo amplifies their wrath, society's scorn manifesting in this microcosm of judgment. The younger son circles you now, breath hot on your neck like a predator's huff, his finger jabbing at a perceived loose fold. This curses him to unrest. The sting of his words sharper than any tale, a psychological chill racing down your spine as if the tomb's chill drafts carry the scribe's bay whispering betrayal. Empathy, a quiet undercurrent for their loss amid your peril. The shocking sadness welling as the daughter clutches an amulet, her eyes wide with fear. Mother, he's the one, the unclean bringer of shadows, her innocence twisted into accusation, stings that burrow deep like venom in veins, the family's collective fury a cycle mirroring the Nile's destructive floods, empathy for their grief a mirror to your hidden scars yet fueling their assault. the sad element deepening as you recall a fellow WT stoned last season for a similar outcry. His body left for jackals while the accusers mourned in peace, your status rendering you expendable, heavier than the mummy's weight that sways slightly under their prods. An absurd historical tidbit stings through the chaos embalmers sometimes face trials by omen, where families cast lots or consulted oracles to verify work, a practice that turned grief into gambling with your life. The scorpion accusations now a barrage that leaves you reeling, palms sweating anew under the wet wool's crust, mutating discomfort into a slick itch that heightens the bite's phantom pain. Sarcasm flickering like a mirage charming, a performance review from hell, where the critics wield stones instead of stars. Worse than a bad Yelp rant in some online era, where at least anonymity shields you. Not this face-to-face venom where stings land with physical force as the sun shoves again. The tomb's stifling air thickening with tension, mutating into a cloud of suspicion that chokes your retorts. You kneel to demonstrate the rap's integrity, fingers fumbling with knots as accusations rain down, each word a scorpion tail whipping in the gloom, the metallic tang intensifying as dust from the floor coats your lips, the wet wool's flakes scattering like shed exoskeletons, the sensory assault blending heat and hurt into dizziness where breaths come short. The family's wrath, a storm that builds unrelenting, empathy clashing with survival as you whisper pleas for mercy. The sad irony that your craft births their hope yet invites their hate, heavier than the vault's stone ceiling that seems to lower with every shout. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you see the tomb as a microcosm of Egypt's shadowed soul, grief's scorpions scuttling through the sands of loss, families lashing out at the lowly while gods watch impassively from painted walls, the Nile's distant roar, an indifferent chorus to human venom, winds through vents whispering escapes that never come for the accused. The priest intervenes at last, his voice cutting the chaos like a blade, but his mediation favors them, demanding reparations from your meager pouch, stings that draw blood from your pockets, a factual echo of customs where embalmers paid grief tithes to appease kin, your status's weight crushing as you hand over copper scraps, palms bleeding afresh from the strain, the humidity's haze lifting but leaving the air heavy with unresolved fury. A modern comparison bites like their words. It's like a bad family reunion where you're the black sheep blamed for everything. Worse than holiday arguments where at least eggnog dulls the pain. Not this tomb where stings linger in the soul. You rise. The family's glares fading as they turn to prayers, but the scorpion bites pulse on, a heavier venom than any desert creature's. The mummy's wrapped form a strange visual image of bound silence amid the storm, its linen contours rippling in the draught like waves of unspoken rage, sending a mood shift of scarred vigilance that questions if tomorrow's grief will bring deadlier stings in this vault of endless accusations. You slip through the moonlit markets of Thebes under a sky freckled with indifferent stars, the question hissing in your shadowed thoughts like a serpent in the reeds. Did you know that ancient embalmers like you often ventured into black market herb trades at night, risking lashes or limb loss for rare imports like myrrh from Punt or cassia from distant Arabia? With temple records hinting that up to a third of WTI were caught and branded as thieves by Pharaoh's guards. Their halls confiscated while the elite mummies they supplied gleamed unscarred. A custom where your desperation for quality ingredients could turn a simple errand into a dance with death's own shadow. The dusty paths crunch softly under your sandaled feet, each step stirring up a fine cloud that tastes like baked earth and old secrets on your tongue. The night's cool breeze carrying the faint, acrid whiff of distant Nile mud mixed with the spice vendor's lingering aromas, cinnamon and frankincense teasing your nostrils like forbidden promises, while fear grips your chest in a vice of icy fingers. Heart-pounding erratic rhythms that echo in your ears like the distant drumbeats of temple rituals. The wet wool of your cloak hastily donned over your stained tunic clinging to your sweat-dampened back despite the evening chill, mutating into a heavy shroud that whispers against your skin with every cautious move. The moonlight filtering through palm fronds above casting elongated shadows that twist like the serpents of Apep slithering across the path, heightening your paranoia as if the chaos god himself trails you for daring this nocturnal hunt. You weave between shuttered stalls, the physical event a tense navigation where one misplaced footfall could topple a clay pot and summon guards from their posts. their footsteps already pounding faintly in the distance like the heartbeat of an approaching storm. Historians debate whether such midnight markets were sanctioned by corrupt officials or purely illicit networks run by smugglers from Nubia. A uncertainty that pulses in your veins as you spot the herb seller's dim lantern ahead, its glow a beacon in the dusty gloom, your fear deepening into a clammy sweat that beads on your forehead, stinging your eyes like unshed tears of dread. Empathy surging unexpectedly for the other Wutiai who brave this path nightly. Their faces haunted in guild whispers by tales of captures that ended in quarry slavery or worse. The shocking element clawing at you as a rat scurries across your path, its tiny claws scraping the dust like a guard's sandal, forcing you to freeze mid-step, breath held in a chest tight with terror. The night silence shattered by a distant dog's bark that sounds too much like a human shout, your lowly status amplifying the peril shunned by day, hunted by night for the very herbs that elevate the dead you tend, the injustice a heavier cloak than the wool weighing on your shoulders, society revering the scented mummies, while condemning the hands that procure the scents. The guard's footsteps grow louder, rhythmic thuds on the packed earth that vibrate through your souls like warnings from the underworld. The moonlight's silver wash mutating the market's alleys into a labyrinth of lurking threats, where every corner hides potential betrayal. The sensory struggle intensifying as fear's chill races down your spine, contrasting the warm dust clinging to your legs like a second skin, the wet wool's dampness now a cold compress that shivers against your flesh, mutating comfort into clammy unease as you duck behind a stack of woven baskets, their fibrous scent mingling with your own anxious sweat that tastes salty on your lips when you lick them nervously. The pounding steps nearing like the inexorable approach of judgment in the duat. Empathy for the herb seller, a fellow outcast trading in shadows blooming as you spot him huddled over his wares. Bundles of rare henbane and mandrake roots that could ease a mummy's preservation, but cost lives in the smuggling. The sad irony that you risk everything for plants that bind souls eternally, while your own K trembles in mortal fear, heavier than the pouch of copper demon at your belt, meagre payment for the herbs yet all you can spare from your scant earnings. An absurd historical tidbit slithers through your panic embalmers, sometimes bartered with grave goods, pilfered from lesser tombs for these rarities. A desperate trade where one desecration funded another, frowned upon by priests but ignored in necessity, your fear spiking as the guards' lanterns bob into view, their light piercing the moonlit veil like accusing eyes, forcing you to press deeper into the shadows, heart hammering so loud it drowns the night's cricket chorus. The pounding footsteps now a thunderous cadence that shakes the dust into fresh clouds, stinging your throat as you inhale sharply. The wet wool's chill mutating into a shivering barrier that fails to shield you from the encroaching dread. Sarcasm flickering dimly in your thoughts like a dying ember. Brilliant plan, sneaking like a tomb robber for leaves that smell better than they save. Worse than midnight grocery runs in some neon-lit future where at least cameras don't carry spears, and yet, beneath it, a psychological chill deepens as you realize one capture could end your guild days in chains. Empathy for your family distant and ashamed welling as you imagine their faces if word spreads of your thievery. The shocking sadness hitting as the seller signals you from afar, his eyes wide with shared alarm, urging you forward despite the risk. The guard's voices now audible, gruff banter about recent thefts that slices through you like a blade, their footsteps pounding closer, each thud a scorpion strike to your nerves, society's hypocrisy, a venom that poisons your resolve, revering herbal rituals in temples while hunting those who supply them in the dark. You dart across the open path when the guards turn a corner, feet kicking up dust that tastes gritty on your lips. The physical sprint a burst of adrenaline that strains your legs, fear gripping tighter as a loose stone rolls underfoot, nearly betraying you with a clatter. The moonlight's mutable glow casting your shadow long and distorted like a fleeing bear spirit. The sensory assault of pounding heart and stinging dust, blending into a dizzy rush, where breaths come in gasps that burn your lungs. The wet wool flapping like a flag of surrender against your back, mutating motion into added weight that slows you. The herb seller's stall finally reached as you crouch beside him, palms sweating anew despite the cool night. The guard's footsteps fading but echoing in your mind like persistent ghosts. Historians pondering if such nocturnal procurements fueled embalming innovations, or merely sustained the trade's underbelly, your fear ebbing to a tremor as you haggle in whispers for the mandrake bundle. Its earthy scent a brief balm amid the dust bite, the injustice of risking life for roots that priests will bless without credit, weighing heavier than the pouch you exchange. Empathy for the seller, a scarred veteran of these shadows, deepening as he warns of increased patrols. His voice a rasp from years of similar terrors, the sad element welling as you tuck the herbs into your cloak, knowing one failed sneak could orphan your kin or chain you to the quarries. Society's blind eye to your necessity, a sting sharper than any guard spear. The footsteps resume faintly, a distant pound that reignites the vice on your chest, forcing a hasty retreat through back alleys where dust clouds billow like veils of the damned, the moonlight filtering through lattices and fractured beams that mutate the path into a maze of light and dark, the wet wool's dampness chilling further in the breeze, mutating into a shivering reminder of vulnerability as fear's grip loosens but lingers. The sensory struggle of pounding pulse and stinging eyes easing into wary vigilance, the metallic tang fading to a dusty aftertaste as you melt into the night. Empathy for all night prowlers in this empire of shadows, a quiet companion on the return. With clever commentary exhilarating, herb hunting like a spy thriller, minus the gadgets and with more sand in your sandals. Unlike midnight snack runs where the only guard is a sleepy cat, you clutch the bundle tighter, but the fear pulses on, a heavier shadow than the moon's cast. The market's receding stalls, a strange visual image of moon-washed ghosts, their empty awnings flapping like spectral wings, sending a mood shift of haunted relief that questions if the guard's echoes will haunt your dreams or manifest as real pursuit in this nocturnal gamble. You creep along the moonlit fringes of Thebes' bustling night market, under a canopy of stars that wink like indifferent witnesses to your peril. The question coiling in your shadowed mind like a viper in the underbrush, did you know that ancient embalmers like you frequently bartered in these illicit midnight bazaars for exotic herbs like Ethiopian myrrh or Arabian frankincense? With hieroglyphic ledgers revealing that guards patrolled these paths nightly, snaring up to half the WTI in traps that ended in public shamings or forced marches to the quarries, where a single intercepted bundle could brand you a smuggler of death's secrets. Your haul seized, while the pharaoh's mummies you enhanced perfumed the afterlife without a trace of your risk. The dusty paths crunch faintly under your cautious sandals, each granule shifting like tiny teeth, grinding against your soles, stirring up a haze that tastes of parched earth and faint spice remnants on your tongue. The metallic tang now a gritty residue from the day's labours mixed with the night's dry bite. While fear grips your chest in a crushing vice that squeezes your breaths into shallow rasps, heart thumping erratic like a trapped bird against your ribs, the wet wool of your cloak hastily thrown over your stained tunic clinging to your sweat-slicked back despite the evening's deceptive cool, mutating into a damp weight that whispers against your skin with every stealthy step, the moonlight piercing through palm leaves above to cast elongated shadows that twist like serpents, slithering across the ground, heightening your paranoia as if Apep's minions trail your every move. The guard's footsteps pounding in the distance like the rhythmic drum of an approaching executioner, each thud vibrating through the earth to jolt your nerves, a physical event that forces you to freeze behind a stack of reed baskets, their fibrous scent mingling with your anxious sweat that beads cold on your forehead, stinging your eyes like unshed accusations from the gods who demand perfection but offer no protection for the lowly like you. Historians debating whether these moonlit markets were tolerated as necessary shadows of the empire's trade or hunted as breeding grounds for rebellion. The uncertainty that pulses in your veins as you peer around the corner, spotting the herb vendor's dim lantern flickering like a will-o'-the-wisp in the dusty gloom. Your fear deepening into a clammy chill that races down your spine. Empathy surging for the vendor himself, a scarred fellow at eye rumoured to have lost an eye to a guard's whip last season, his hunched form a mirror to your own hidden desperation, the shocking element clawing at you as a sudden rustle nearby reveals a stray cat darting across the path, its eyes gleaming yellow in the moonlight like omens of betrayal, forcing your heart to leap into your throat, breaths hitching in a chest tight with terror, the night silence shattered by the distant pound of boots that seems to grow louder, each step a hammer on your fraying resolve, the wet wool's dampness now a shivering barrier that fails to shield you from the encroaching dread, mutating comfort into a clammy unease as you dash to the next shadow, palms sweating despite the cool, the metallic tang intensifying as dust kicked up coats your lips, a sensory struggle that blends fear's icy grip with the path's gritty assault, turning every inhale a laboured fight against panic's tide. The guard's footsteps echo closer, a pounding cadence that reverberates through your bones like the inexorable march of judgment in the duat. The moonlight's silver wash mutating the market's stalls into skeletal silhouettes that loom like accusing judges from the underworld, where every creak of wood or flutter of cloth sounds like a betraying signal. The fear gripping tighter as you spot their lanterns bobbing like malevolent eyes in the distance, forcing you to press flat against a mud brick wall, its rough texture scraping your arms like unforgiving claws. The wet walls cling, a constant torment that itches where sweat has pooled, mutating into a second skin of anxiety that amplifies the night's chill drafts whispering through the alleys, the pounding steps now a thunderous rhythm that shakes loose more dust, stinging your throat as you swallow against the rising bile of terror. Empathy deepening for all the night prowlers in this empire of shadows, smugglers, thieves, fellow embalmers whose fear mirrors yours, lives balanced on the knife's edge for scraps of trade that sustain the grand rituals above. The sad irony that you risk limb and liberty for herbs that bind souls eternally, while your own cark quivers in mortal dread, heavier than the hidden pouch at your belt bulging with copper deben. Meagre currency for the rarities that could elevate a mummy from common to divine. Society's hypocrisy, a venom that poisons your stealth, glorifying scented preservations in temples while hounding those who forage in the dark. An absurd historical tidbit hisses through the panic embalmers sometimes disguised herb bundles as funeral offerings, wrapping them in miniature linens to mimic tiny mummies. A clever ruse that fooled guards but invited curses if discovered. Your fear spiking as the footsteps halt abruptly, voices murmuring low like conspirators in the gloom. Did you hear that shadow by the baskets, forcing you to hold your breath, chest burning from the strain, the metallic tang now a coppery flood from biting your lip to stifle a gasp, the wet wool's dampness chilling further in the breeze, mutating into a shivering shroud that betrays your tremors with faint rustles, sarcasm flickering dimly in your thoughts like a guttering flame's splendid espionage, sneaking for plants that outrank you in value, worse than late-night pharmacy runs in some lit-up world where alarms don't carry spears, and yet, beneath it, a psychological chill deepens as you realize one misstep could chain you to the oars of a galley or worse. Empathy for your family distant and wary welling as you imagine their shame if you're branded a thief. The shocking sadness hitting as the vendor's signal a soft owl hoot cuts the tension, urging you forward, but the guard's footsteps resume, pounding closer like the heartbeat of doom itself, each thud a scorpion strike to your composure, the night's paths narrowing into a trap where fear's vice squeezes unrelentingly. The sensory assault of pounding pulse and stinging dust blending into a dizzy whirl where breaths come short, the wet wool flapping like a flag of folly against your back, mutating motion into added peril that slows you, the herb stall's dim light a tantalizing glow amid the dust's veil. Historians pondering if such nocturnal forays fueled embalming's mystical edge or merely perpetuated the trade's perilous underbelly, your fear ebbing to a tremor as you reach the vendor, palms slick with sweat as you exchange whispers for the bundle of rare juniper berries, their woody scent a brief oasis amid the dust's bite, the injustice of hazarding life for berries that priests will bless without peril, weighing heavier than the pouch you lighten, empathy for the vendor, a weathered soul with tales of near misses deepening as he warns of a patrol route change, his voice a rasp from years of similar dreads, the sad element welling as you tuck the herbs away, knowing one failed sneak could shatter your guild standing or orphan your kin, society's blind eye to your necessity a sting sharper than any guard's gaze, the pounding footsteps fading but echoing in your mind like persistent phantoms, the moonlight through palms mutating into fractured beams that guide your retreat, the sensory struggle easing into wary haste as you melt back into the alleys, the metallic tang fading to a dusty aftertaste that lingers like regret. With clever commentary thrilling, herb heists like a spy novel, minus the glamour and with more grit in your teeth. Unlike convenient store dashes where the only risk is forgetting your wallet, the fear pulses on, a heavier shadow than the moon's pallid cast. The market's receding forms a strange visual image of silvered ghosts, their awnings billowing like veils from the underworld, sending a mood shift of haunted triumph that questions if the guard's echoes will dissolve into dawn or solidify into pursuit in this nocturnal web of peril. You slip through the moonlit veil of Thebes' winding alleys under a sky strewn with stars that gleam like distant, mocking jewels in the crown of Nuit, the question slinking through your shadowed thoughts like a thief in the reeds. Did you know that ancient embalmers like you prowled these nocturnal markets for rare herbs like myrrh from Punt or cassia from Arabia, with temple archives whispering that guards ensnared 1 in 5 such foragers, dragging them to the quarries where chains bit deeper than any scorpion? Their bundles seized while the pharaoh's mummies they aimed to perfect languished without the sacred scents. A peril where 1 intercepted pouch could unravel your guild, standing faster than rot claims untreated flesh. The dusty paths exhale a fine grit that rises with each stealthy step, coating your sandals and tasting like parched clay mingled with the faint exotic whiff of spilled spices from daytime trades, coriander and cumin, lingering like ghosts of commerce, the metallic tang on your tongue, now a gritty sharpness from the dust's invasion, biting sharper as you swallow against the dryness that parches your throat, while fear grips your chest in an iron clamp that squeezes your breaths into ragged whispers, heart-hammering wild rhythms that echo in your ears like the distant thud of a mallet on stone. The wet wool of your cloak hastily draped over your work-stained tunic clinging to your back with a damp insistence despite the night's deceptive chill, mutating into a heavy veil that whispers against your skin with every cautious glide, the moonlight filtering through overhanging date palms to cast elongated shadows that writhe across the ground like the serpents of Apep coiling in wait, heightening your paranoia as if the chaos god himself has set his minions to trail you. The guard's footsteps pounding faintly in the distance like the inexorable beat of an approaching doom, each thud vibrating through the earth to jolt your nerves, a physical event that forces you to duck into a narrow crevice between mud brick walls, their rough texture scraping your arms like unforgiving claws as you press flat, breaths hitching in a chest tight with terror. Historians uncertain if these moonlit herb hunts were born of necessity from trade embargoes or sheer desperation amid Pharaoh's ever-rising demands for perfumed preservations, a debate that throbs in your pulse as you peer out, spotting the vendor's stall shrouded in darkness, its bundled wares hidden under coarse sacks that bulge like concealed corpses, your fear deepening into a clammy sweat that beads cold on your forehead, stinging your eyes like natron remnants from the day's labours, empathy surging for the vendor, a gaunt figure you've traded with before, his eyes hollow from nights like this, scarred by a guard's whip that left him limping, his plight a mirror to your own hidden desperations, the shocking element clawing at you as a loose pebble skitters underfoot from your shift, the tiny clatter amplified in the silence like a betraying shout, forcing your heart to leap into your throat, breaths freezing in lungs that burn from the strain, the night's hush shattered by the distant pound of boots that seems to swell closer, each step a hammer on your fraying composure, the wet wool's dampness now a shivering barrier that chills your core, mutating into a clammy shroud that betrays your tremors, with faint rustles against the wall, sarcasm flickering dimly in your thoughts like a guttering lantern, magnificent stealth, creeping for weeds that outvalue your life, worse than midnight snack raids in some illuminated era where fridges hum instead of guards growl, and yet, beneath it, a psychological chill deepens as you realize one capture could strip your tools and title, leaving you branded a pilferer of death's domain. Empathy for your kin distant and wary of your taint welling as you imagine their hunger if your earnings cease. The sad irony that you hazard everything for plants that seal souls in eternity, while your own bay quivers in mortal shadows, heavier than the concealed pouch at your belt, laden with copper scraps bartered from meagre rations. Society's hypocrisy, a venom that poisons your haste, glorifying herbal anointings in sunlit temples while condemning the hands that forage in the dark. The guard's footsteps grow thunderous, a rhythmic pound that echoes off the alley walls like the drum of fate in the Duat's halls. the moonlight's pallid glow mutating the paths into a labyrinth of silver and ink, where every turn hides potential ambush, the sensory struggle intensifying as fear's icy vice squeezes your chest tighter. Contrasting the warm dust clinging to your legs like a gritty second skin, the wet walls cling a constant torment that itches where sweat has pooled, mutating discomfort into a slick unease that slicks your grip on the pouch. The pounding steps now a cacophony that drowns the cricket's nocturnal serenade, forcing you to bolt across an open stretch when the patrols pause, feet kicking up dust clouds that sting your throat as you inhale sharply, the metallic tang now a coppery flood from biting your lip to stifle a gasp, the wet wool's dampness chilling further in the sprint's breeze, mutating into a flapping hindrance that slows you like a tangled net, an absurd historical tidbit hissing through the panic. Embalmers sometimes disguised herb pouches as amulets, stringing them around necks to mimic pilgrims, a ruse that fooled centuries but invited curses if unveiled. Your fear spiking as the vendor's stall looms, his signal a subtle hand wave like a wraith's beckon cutting the tension, but the guards' voices rumble low. Search the alley smugglers about tonight, sending your pulse into frenzy, each word a scorpion strike to your nerves, the night's paths narrowing into a snare where fear's grip squeezes unrelentingly, the sensory assault of pounding pulse and stinging dust blending into a dizzy whirl where breaths come short, the wet wool flapping like a flag of folly against your back, mutating motion into added peril that tugs at your balance. The herb stall's dim outline, a tantalizing sanctuary amid the dust's veil. Historians pondering if such nocturnal ventures sparked embalming's alchemical innovations, or merely perpetuated the craft's perilous fringe. Your fear ebbing to a tremor as you reach the vendor, palms slick with sweat as you exchange murmurs for the bundle of rare juniper twigs, their resinous scent a brief oasis cutting the dust's bite, the injustice of braving death for twigs that priests will consecrate without risk weighing heavier than the pouch you empty. Empathy for the vendor, a weathered survivor with tales of evaded patrols deepening as he mutters warnings of a new watch captain ruthless as set. His voice, a gravelly whisper from years of similar shadows, the sad element welling as you secure the herbs in your cloak's folds, knowing one botched sneak could shatter your livelihood or doom your kin to beggary. Society's blind eye to your essential gambles a sting sharper than any patrol's gaze. The pounding footsteps receding but lingering in your ears like echoes from the underworld. The moonlight through fronds mutating into splintered lances that guide your withdrawal. The sensory struggle easing into guarded haste as you dissolve back into the alleys. The metallic tang fading to a dusty afterglow that clings like remorse. With clever commentary exhilarating, herb espionage like a cloak and dagger tale. Sand the romance and plus the grit in your teeth. Unlike late-night convenience dashes where the only hazard is a flickering bulb, not spear-wielding shadows the fear throbs on, a heavier mantle than the night's pall. The market's fading stalls a strange visual image of lunar phantoms, their draped cloths billowing like shrouds from forsaken tombs, sending a mood shift of spectral unease that questions if the guards' phantoms will dissipate with dawn or solidify into chains in this veiled pursuit. You slink deeper into the labyrinthine alleys of Thebes under the moon's pallid gaze that bathes the world in a silvery sheen like spilled mercury from alchemists' forbidden vials. The question, writhing in your shadowed psyche like a nematode burrowing through fertile soil, did you know that ancient embalmers like you frequently haunted these moon-kissed markets? For elusive herbs such as myrrh tears from Punt's thorny acacias, or cassia bark from Arabian caravans, with etched stele suggesting that Pharaoh's sentinels snared nearly a quarter of such nocturnal foragers, hauling them to the vizier's courts where accusations of herb hoarding led to brandings or banishments to the eastern deserts, their precious finds forfeited while the royal mummies they sought to anoint languished in scentless mediocrity, a hazard where one wayward glance from a patrol could transform your herb quest into a terminal exile. The dusty paths exhale a powdery veil with each muffled footfall, granules whispering against your sandals like tiny accusations from the earth itself, tasting of arid clay mingled with the ghostly remnants of daytime spices, faint echoes of cumin and coriander that tease your nostrils like spectral lures from vanished merchants, the metallic tang on your tongue, now a gritty abrasion from the night's parched inhalations, biting sharper as you swallow against the lump of dread that constricts your throat. while fear grips your chest in a merciless clamp that crushes your breaths into furtive sips. Heart-slamming chaotic cadences that resound in your ears like the frantic patter of scarab beetles fleeing the dawn. The wet wool of your cloak draped hastily over your grime-streaked tunic adhering to your back with a clammy tenacity despite the evening's illusory coolness, mutating into a sodden mantle that rustles faintly against your skin with every stealthy advance. The moonlight sieving through overhanging date palms to forge elongated shadows that slink across the ground like elongated asps poised to strike, amplifying your paranoia as if Set's own minions have woven illusions to ensnare your path. The guard's footsteps pounding in the near distance like the inexorable thud of a quarry hammer on unyielding granite, each impact quaking through the soil to rattle your nerves, a physical event that compels you to flatten against a crumbling mud brick facade, its coarse surface grazing your arms like the rasp of unforgiving papyrus edges, breath snagging in a chest compressed by terror's vice, historians speculating whether these moonlit herb pursuits arose from supply shortages during Nile floods or deliberate embargoes by rival guilds, a conjecture that throbs in your veins as you scan the gloom, citing the herb peddler's covert nook shrouded in sackcloth that bulges like concealed cadavers, your fear intensifying into a glacial sweat that pearls cold on your brow, stinging your eyes like diluted natron from the day's desiccations, empathy welling for the peddler, a gaunt spectre you've bartered with prior, his features etched by whip scars from a botched deal last inundation, his silhouette a reflection of your own veiled desperations, the shocking element surging as a loose tile dislodges under your weight, clattering softly into the dust like a betraying oracle bone, propelling your heart into a frenzied gallop that chokes your throat, breaths freezing in lungs seared by the strain, the night's hush fractured by the guard's escalating pound that swells nearer. Each bootfall a mallet on your splintering poise, the wet wool's dampness now a quivering sheath that chills your core, mutating into a clammy prison that betrays your shudders with subtle swishes against the wall. Sarcasm glimmering faintly in your thoughts like a waning crescent exquisite covert ops, skulking for weeds that eclipse your worth, worse than twilight errands in some radiant future where aisles glow instead of guards prowl. And yet, beneath it, a psychological chill burrows deeper, as if the tomb's wraiths have trailed you here. Empathy for your kin remote and cautious of your stigma swelling as you envision their destitution if you're snared. The sad irony that you peril all for botanicals that anchor souls in perpetuity while your own bear flutters in earthly jeopardy, heavier than the secreted satchel at your waist, brimming with copper scraps scavenged from paltry wages. Society's duplicity a toxin that taints your creep, exalting herbal unctions in daylight sanctuaries while persecuting the fingers that forage in obscurity. The guard's footsteps burgeon into a resonant thunder, a syncopated pound that rebounds off the alley confines like the drum of destiny in the duat's abysses. The moonlight's one illumination mutating the roots into a maze of argent and ebony, where every bend conceals latent peril, the sensory strife escalating as fear's glacial clamp constricts your chest further, opposing the tepid dust adhering to your limbs like a granular hide. The wet wool's adherence a perpetual affliction that prickles where perspiration has amassed, mutating unease into a slick distress that slicks your hold on composure. The pounding strides now a tumultuous tempo that overwhelms the nocturnal cricket symphony, compelling you to dart across a vulnerable expanse when the patrols falter, feet churning dust mists that prick your gullet as you gasp sharply. The metallic tang now a coppery deluge from gnawing your lip to quell a wheeze, the wet wool's dampness chilling deeper in the dasher's gust, mutating into a flapping impediment that hinders you like an entangled snare, an absurd historical tidbit hissing amid the frenzy, embalmers occasionally camouflaged herb satchels as funerary talismans, suspending them from necks to ape devotees, a shrewd ploy that duped watchmen but beckoned maledictions if exposed. Your fear cresting as the peddler's niche emerges, his cue a subtle palm flutter like a phantom summons severing the strain, but the guard's murmurs rumble low, scour the byways traffickers abound this eve, propelling your pulse into turmoil, each utterance a scorpion's jab to your senses, the night's roots constricting into a trap where fear's clasp squeezes unyieldingly, the sensory onslaught of pounding heartbeat and stinging grit merging into a vertiginous vortex where breaths abbreviate. the wet wool flapping like a banner of folly against your rear, mutating motion into supplemental hazard that tugs at your equilibrium. The urban niche's subdued outline a seductive refuge amid the grit's shroud, historians musing if such nocturnal herb ventures ignited embalming's arcane prowess, or simply perpetuated the vocation's hazardous periphery. Your fear waning to a quiver as you attain the peddler, palms clammy with sweat as you trade susurrations for the cluster of scarce juniper sprigs. Their resinous aroma, a fleeting haven slicing the grit's nip, the injustice of venturing demise for sprigs that clerics will hallow sans hazard, weighing heavier than the satchel you deplete. Empathy for the peddler, a weathered survivor with narratives of eluded centuries intensifying as he cautions of a novel sentinel chief merciless as set. His tone a gravelly murmur from eons of akin glooms, the sad facet surging as you fasten the herbs in your cloak's creases, knowing one bungled slink could demolish your livelihood or condemn your kin to mendicancy. Society's oblivious gaze to your vital wages a prick keener than any sentinel's scrutiny. The pounding footsteps diminishing but resonating in your oracles like phantoms from the nether. The moonlight through fronds mutating into fragmented lances that steer your retreat. The sensory strife alleviating into guarded celerity as you dissolve back into the byways. The metallic tang ebbing to a gritty aftermath that adheres like remorse. With clever commentary invigorating, herb capers like a cloak and dagger yarn, sans the allure and plus the grit in your molars, unlike convenience dashes where the sole jeopardy is a flickering bulb. Not lance-bearing phantoms, the fear throbs onward, a heavier umbra than the moon's ashen cast. The market's waning stalls a strange visual image of lunar wraiths, their draped fabrics undulating like shrouds from forsaken sepulchres, sending a mood shift of spectral disquiet that questions if the guard's spectres will evaporate with aurora or congeal into fetters in this veiled chase. You lie awake in the stifling confines of your reed-thatched hovel on the outskirts of Thebes, the question gnawing at your restless mind like a jackal worrying a bone in the dark. Did you know that ancient embalmers like you often endured nights haunted by the bay of the dead they handled, with medical papyri from the time describing spectral afflictions that drove some WTI to madness or self-exile? Visions so vivid that over a quarter reportedly sought exorcisms from wandering priests, only to find their pleas dismissed as the delusions of the unclean, a torment where the silence of the grave followed you home, turning rest into a battlefield where your own soul fought for sanity amid the echoes of the preserved. The oppressive silence blankets the room like a shroud too heavy to lift, broken only by the distant croak of frogs along the Nile's edge and the occasional creak of settling reeds in the walls, each sound amplified in the void to mimic the whispers of the scribe's care you handled that day, murmuring accusations of mishandled organs or flawed raps that doom him to wander the duat forever, while cold sweat beads on your skin like dew on a tombstone, soaking through the thin linen sheet and mutating the wet wool of your discarded tunic draped over a stool nearby into a damp spectre that seems to breathe in the corner, its fabric exhaling the day's lingering scents of natron and resin that cling to your nostrils like uninvited ghosts, the metallic tang on your tongue now a cloying aftertaste of bile from suppressed nausea, bitter and unrelenting as if you've swallowed the scribe's unrest along with your meagre supper of stale bread and onions, the silence pressing down heavier than the chamber's humidity ever did, turning every shallow breath into a laboured sigh that echoes in your chest. Fear's icy fingers tracing patterns on your spine as spectral visions begin to coalesce in the gloom, shadowy forms flickering at the edges of your vision like the torchlight's mutable dance from the Pernefer, now haunting your hovel as elongated wisps that twist into the scribe's hollowed features, his empty eyes staring back with accusation, forcing you to bolt upright, heart pounding erratic like the guard's footsteps from last night's herb hunt. The physical event a surge of adrenaline that propels you to light a small oil lamp, its feeble flame sputtering to life and casting jittery shadows that mutate the walls into a canvas of writhing figures, perhaps the widow's grieving wail frozen in mid-cry, or the son's clenched fist poised to strike historians uncertain if such visions stem from natron fumes toxic haze inhaled daily, or the psychological toll of constant defilement. A debate that offers no comfort as cold sweat cascades down your back, soaking the sheet into a clammy second skin that clings like the wet wool's persistent embrace. The oppressive silence now fractured by your own ragged gasps, empathy welling for the scribe whose bay you imagine tormented similarly, his preserved form safe in the tomb while his spirit rails against your perceived slights. The shocking element clawing at you as a vision solidifies a translucent hand reaching from the lamp's glow, fingers curled like the scribe's desiccated claws grasping for the heart you left intact, sending a jolt through your frame that spills the lamp's oil, the flame flaring briefly before steadying, its light revealing nothing but empty air. Yet the chill lingers, burrowing deep into your bones like the cold sweat that now pools at the small of your back, turning the reed mat beneath you into a sodden nest that squelches with every shift, the sensory struggle intensifying as silence reasserts itself. Thicker now, pregnant with unspoken curses that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. Perhaps echoes of the family's wrath from the tomb inspection, their scorpion-like stings mutating into nocturnal barbs that prick your conscience, replaying the widow's wail and the sun's shove in vivid loops that blur the line between memory and apparition. Your lowly status amplifying the hauntings shunned by the living, now pursued by the dead, the injustice of preserving their eternity at the cost of your own peace, weighing heavier than the night's blanket of stars outside, society revering the mummified while damning the makers to these spectral sieges, empathy deepening for fellow WTI who've confided in guild whispers of similar nights, their eyes hollow from visions that drove some to the Nile's embrace for relief. The sad irony that you bind souls to rest yet find none yourself, heavier than the oppressive silence that smothers your cries, cold sweat now a torrent that chills your fevered skin, turning the hovel's air into a clammy tomb where breaths come shallow to avoid stirring more phantoms. The lamp's flame wavers in a draught seeping through the reed door, mutating shadows into fleeting shapes that dance like the bare of past mummies. You've wrapped the merchant from last moon whose organs slipped in your grasp, or the child whose tiny form broke your resolve. Each vision a psychological chill that races down your limbs, numbing your fingers as if the cold sweat carries the duat's frost. The wet wool's discarded form in the corner, now a hulking silhouette that seems to shift when you blink, as if it harbours a spectre of your own making, sarcasm bubbling through the terror like a feeble shield splendid insomnia, haunted by clients who can't even tip, worse than binge-watching horror in some electric-lit era where you can pause the frights, not endure them in endless loops amid the silence's grip, and yet, beneath it, a deep unease settles as the visions coalesce into the scribe's full form, translucent and wavering, his mouth opening in a silent scream that pierces your soul, forcing you to whisper incantations from the Book of the Dead, voice cracking in the void, the metallic tang intensifying as fear dries your mouth further, the oppressive silence mocking your pleas by amplifying the blood rush in your ears, turning it into a roar like the Nile's cataracts, cold sweat now a full cascade that soaks through to the mat, creating puddles that reflect the lamp's flame like mocking eyes staring back, the sensory assault blending chill and silence into a suffocating cocoon where every creak of the reed sounds like footsteps from the beyond. Perhaps the guards from your herb sneak materializing as avenging spirits, or the family's wrath transcending the physical to haunt your repose, empathy clashing with self-pity for the dead who at least rest in their wraps while you endure this vigil. The sad element deepening as you recall a guild brother's tale of visions driving him to confess imagined flaws, leading to his downfall and unmarked grave. Your status ensuring no priest will exorcise your haunts, heavier than the night's starless weight pressing down. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you envision the Nile's vast expanse beyond your hovel, its waters a black mirror reflecting the stars as indifferent witnesses to mortal torments. The river's eternal flow carrying away the bay of the restless, while trapping yours in this cycle of spectral siege. Winds through the reeds sighing like laments from the unsung dead. The silence a canvas where visions paint their horrors unchecked. The scribe's apparition fades as you chant louder, but the cold sweat persists, a factual remnant of the body's response to natron toxins that linger in your system. Historians suggesting such hallucinations stemmed from cumulative exposure rather than divine ire, yet in this moment, it feels like punishment for your unclean trade, the oppressive silence reclaiming the room as the lamp gutters low, mutating the hovel into a tomb of living dread where rest eludes you. Empathy for all haunted WTI, a quiet solidarity that offers scant comfort amid the chill. A modern comparison chills further. It's like insomnia from ghost stories, but self-inflicted by your day's deeds. Worse than scrolling endless feeds in a glowing screen world where you can close the app, not stare into the abyss of your own making, the silence now absolute, broken only by your shuddering breaths that echo like accusations from within. You curl tighter on the mat, cold sweat pooling like an accusatory lake, the visions lurking at the periphery like waiting predators, the metallic tang a persistent reminder that dawn's light may banish them, but never the fear that summons their return. The hovels read walls, a strange visual image of woven bars imprisoning you in silence, their shadows creeping like fingers from the duat, sending a mood shift of desolate isolation that questions if these spectral nights will ever yield to dreamless peace or devour your sanity in their oppressive embrace. You stand in the sun-baked courtyard of the great temple of Amun at Karnak, the question scorching your thoughts like the midday blaze itself. Did you know that ancient embalmers like you frequently clashed with priests over the minutiae of rites, with hieroglyphic complaints etched on temple walls revealing that over half such disputes ended in public humiliations or demotions for the WTI, their botched work blamed for omens like sudden eclipses or vulture swarms, while the priests escaped unscathed, a custom where your expertise in flesh clashed against their monopoly on the divine, turning collaborations into battlegrounds where scorn burned hotter than the sun on your exposed skin. The relentless midday sun hammers down like Ra's unyielding hammer, baking the flagstones under your feet into a searing griddle that radiates heat up through your thin sandals, blistering your soles as if you've stepped onto the coals of the underworld itself, while the priests arrayed in pristine white linen robes that flutter like mocking sails in the faint breeze circle the scribe's mummy you've just presented for the final blessing. Their eyes narrowing with disdain as the high priest, a gaunt figure with coal-lined eyes sharp as obsidian blades, points a accusatory finger at a perceived flaw in the wrapping. You fool of the shadows, this fold is uneven. Do you seek to unravel his K before Osiris's throne, his voice booming across the courtyard like thunder from a clear sky, scorching your pride hotter than the sun's rays that beat mercilessly on your exposed arms and neck, turning your skin into a taut, reddened canvas that prickles with the onset of burns. The metallic tang on your tongue mutated from the night's dusty grit into a fiery sharpness from the bile rising in your throat, biting back as you swallow hard against the urge to retort. The wet wool of your work tunic still damp from the morning sweat despite the evaporating heat, clinging to your back like a sodden accusation, mutating into a steaming second skin that traps the sun's fury against your flesh, amplifying every ray into a personal inferno where sweat streams in rivulets that sting your eyes like natron tears. The torchlight absent in this blinding daylight, but its memory lingers in the sun's glare that casts harsh shadows from the towering obelisks, mutating them into elongated judges looming over your clash. The sensory struggle intensifying as the priest's scorn burns deeper, not just words but gestures, fingers jabbing at the linen, robes swirling in dismissive arcs that sear your dignity like brands on cattle, your lowly status rendering you mute in this arena, a mere craftsman pitted against the divine intermediaries who hold the pharaoh's ear, empathy flickering briefly for the scribe whose mummy lies at the centre, his preserved form now a pawn in this ritual power play. Once a man of quiet wisdom, now reduced to a prop for priestly egos, the shocking element erupting as the high priest yanks at the wrapping to demonstrate the flaw, tearing a small rent in the linen you bled to perfect, the rip sounding like a whip crack in the stifling air, forcing a gasp from your lips as pain lances through you, not physical this time, but a soul-deep wound from seeing your labour undone, the injustice swelling as the other priests murmur agreement, their voices a chorus of condemnation that weighs heavier than the mummy's weight you dragged here, society elevating these robed figures as voices of the gods while you, the true guardian of eternity, wallow in the dirt of disdain, the sun's heat now a physical ally to their scorn, blistering your exposed skin into angry welts that throb in time with your humiliated pulse, turning the courtyard into a cauldron where every breath scorches your lungs with dry, incense-laced air that carries the priest's perfumed oils, myrrh and lotus, a mocking contrast to your own reek of natron and sweat. You bow your head, fingers clenching at your sides to hide the tremors, the physical event unfolding as a junior priest steps forward to correct the wrap with clumsy hands, his adjustments rough and unpracticed, risking further damage to the scribe's form while you stand powerless, historians arguing whether such clashes stemmed from genuine ritual concerns or power struggles over temple revenues from funerary offerings, a debate that burns in your gut as you watch, the metallic tang intensifying as you bite your tongue to stifle protests, drawing a coppery hint of blood that mixes with the bile of swallowed rage. The wet wool's steaming cling now a boiling torment that itches and scalds where sun meets damp fabric. Mutating into a full-body blaze that blurs your vision with heat haze, the priest's scorn escalating into a litany of faults. The amulet placement offends Horus, the resin lacks purity. Each barb stinging hotter than the midday sun on your unprotected head, where sweat mats your hair into a sodden helmet that drips stinging trails down your face. Empathy deepening for fellow embalmers who've endured this, some driven to abandon the craft after such public shamings. Their statuses plummeted further into beggary, while priests ascended on the wings of false piety. The sad irony that you clash over rites meant to unite the living with the divine. Yet it divides you into exalted and expendable, heavier than the obelisk's shadows that stretch across the courtyard like accusing fingers pointing solely at you. The sun's rays piercing through the haze to spotlight your humiliation, turning your exposed skin into a map of reddened anguish that pulses with every heartbeat. The high priest circles you now, his robe brushing your arm like a deliberate slight, the contact scorching your pride as he lists more botches a crease here. A loose knot there, his voice dripping condescension like honeyed venom, burning hotter than the flagstones that sear your feet through thinning soles, forcing you to shift weight and wince. The sensory assault blending sun's blaze with scorn's fire into a dizzying pyre where breaths come short and shallow to avoid inhaling their perfumed superiority. The wet wool's mutating steam rising like your suppressed fury. The torchlight's absence leaving the sun to mutate every surface into a glaring mirror that reflects your lowly form amid their grandeur. Empathy clashing with resentment for these priests who never touch the rot, yet claim mastery over the rites you bleed for. The shocking sadness welling as you spot a genuine oversight, a misplaced scarab amulet peeking from the tear perhaps from the family's rough inspection, now ammunition in their arsenal, pain lancing your spirit as they demand penance, a deduction from your rations or extra labour in the natron pits, stinging hotter than any physical burn, your status ensuring compliance without appeal, heavier than the mummy's linen that now seems to sag under the weight of their judgment. An absurd historical tidbit flares through the inferno priests sometimes blessed, botched mummies with extra incantations, charging families fees for the fix while embalmers absorbed the blame, a racket that enriched temples at your expense. The scorn now a barrage that leaves you reeling, palms sweating anew under the wet wool's crust, mutating discomfort into a slick blaze that heightens the bite's phantom agony. Sarcasm scorching your inner monologue like the sun itself, divine critique, where the gods' mouthpieces nitpick your masterpiece like fussy critics at a feast they didn't cook. Worse than online trolls in some digital realm where at least you can block the heat, not stand blistering under this relentless solar jury, and yet, beneath it, a psychological chill creeps despite the heat, as if the scribe's BI watches from the mummy, judging your defense. Empathy a quiet undercurrent for the dead caught in this living feud. The sad element deepening as you kneel to mend the tear under their watchful eyes. Fingers fumbling with linen that rusts against burns. Pain lancing like fresh scorpion tails. The sun's heat pressing like divine disapproval, mutating the courtyard into a stage where your clash plays out for eternity's audience. Society's hierarchy etched in every scorching ray. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you envision Karnak's vast pylons as monolithic sentinels to human folly, priests and embalmers mere ants clashing in the gods' indifferent shadow. The Nile's distant glimmer, a mocking reminder of flows that carry away conflicts but leave scars baked in. Winds through colonnades sighing like laments from the overlooked. The silence between accusations a canvas for divine indifference. The high priest nods reluctant approval at last, but his scorn lingers like heat haze, burning hotter than the sun's descent, a factual echo of rites where corrections required offerings you can't afford, your status weight crushing as you rise, skin throbbing from exposure, the humidity's haze lifting but leaving the air heavy with unresolved fire. A modern comparison burns like the rays it's like a performance review from bosses who never do the work, where feedback scorches without salve. worse than corporate dressings down, where at least air conditioning cools the sting, not this open kiln where scorn sears the soul. You drag the mummy onward, the priest's retreating robes a white blur in the glare, but their scorn pulses on, hotter than the midday sun that etches burns into your exposed skin. The courtyard's obelisks a strange visual image of towering indifference, their hieroglyphs swirling like flames in the heat distortion, sending a mood shift of seared resilience that questions if these clashes forge your spirit or merely char it beyond repair in this eternal furnace of right and wrath. You stand in the sun-drenched atrium of the grand temple of Amun at Karnak. The question searing through your mind like the midday blaze itself, did you know that ancient embalmers like you often locked horns with priests in ritual showdowns, with papyrus logs from the era disclosing that nearly 2/3 of these clashes culminated in the Butiai's public flogging or exile to the salt mines? Their ritual errors scapegoated for celestial signs like comets or locust swarms, while the clergy walked away sanctified, a practice where your gritty knowledge of corpses collided with their celestial claims, igniting feuds that scorched your reputation hotter than the exposed skin blistering under Ra's unrelenting gaze. The relentless sun hammers down like divine mallet forging the unworthy, baking the vast stone courtyard into a shimmering griddle that radiates waves of heat up through your threadbare sandals, blistering your soles as if you've trod on the embers of the underworld's forge, while the priests clad in immaculate linen robes that billow like sails of superiority in the scant breeze encircle the scribe's mummy. You've painstakingly hauled here for the final consecration, their leader, a hawk-faced high priest with eyes lined in kohl, sharper than obsidian daggers, jabbing a bejeweled finger at the linen wraps with a sneer that curls his lips like drying papyrus. You shadow dweller, this amulet sits askew. Do you mock Horus himself with such sloppiness? His voice thundering across the expanse like a storm god's rebuke, burning your ears hotter than the sun's rays that lance your exposed arms and neck, turning your skin into a taut, reddened hide that prickles and tightens with the onset of burns. The metallic tang on your tongue mutated from the night's dusty grit into a scorching bitterness from the bile surging in your throat, biting back as you clench your jaw against the retort bubbling inside, the wet wool of your work tunic still clammy from the morning's exertions, despite the evaporating blaze adhering to your back like a sodden accusation, mutating into a steaming carapace that traps the heat against your flesh, amplifying every ray into a personal pyre where sweat cascades in stinging rivulets that carve fiery paths down your face. The torchlight absent in this glaring daylight, but its flickering memory lingers in the sun's merciless shimmer that casts elongated shadows from the towering pylons, mutating them into jagged spears of judgment thrusting toward your form, the sensory struggle escalating as the priest's scorn ignites deeper. Not mere utterances, but a barrage of gestures, fingers slicing the air, robes swirling in dismissive vortices that sear your dignity like brands on a heretic's hide, your lowly status leaving you voiceless in this sacred arena, a mere flesh tender pitted against the oracles who commune with the divine. Empathy flickering for the scribe whose mummy rests at the feud's core, his preserved husk now a contested relic, once a scribe of humble tales now ensnared in this divine tug-of-war. The shocking element exploding as the high priest yanks at the chest, rapping to illustrate the flaw, ripping a seam you meticulously sealed, the tear resounding like a whip's crack in the stifling heat, forcing a gasp from your lips as anguish lances through you, not just for the damage but for the public spectacle. The injustice ballooning as the lesser priests chime in with nods and murmurs, their voices a harmonious condemnation that weighs heavier than the obelisks looming overhead. Society exalting these linen-clad arbiters as bridges to eternity while you, the true architect of preservation, grovel in the dust of derision. The sun's heat now a tangible ally to their disdain, blistering your exposed skin into angry welts that throb in sync with your humiliated heartbeat, turning the courtyard into a cauldron where every inhalation scorches your lungs with the dry, incense-infused air that bears the priest's anointed oils lotus and myrrh, a taunting contrast to your own stench of natron and toil. You shift your weight, the blistering flagstones sending fresh jolts up your legs, the physical event unfolding as a subordinate priest advances to rectify the rap with inept fingers, his meddling rough and uninformed, jeopardizing further harm to the scribe's form while you remain impotent, Historians pondering whether these ritual clashes arose from authentic doctrinal rifts or veiled grabs for temple tithes from bereaved families, a conjecture that singes your gut as you observe. The metallic tang intensifying as you bite your inner cheek to curb outbursts, drawing a coppery hint of blood that blends with the bile of restrained fury. The wet wool's steaming adherence now a boiling affliction that itches and scalds where sun meets moist cloth, mutating into a full-body conflagration that blurs your sight with heat distortion. The priest's scorn escalating into a litany of defects. The resin reeks of impurity. The folds defy Matt's balance. Or each jab stinging hotter than the midday sun on your unprotected scalp, where sweat mats your hair into a sodden crown that drips stinging trails down your neck. Empathy deepening for fellow embalmers who've weathered this, some shattered to forsake the craft after such spectacles. Their statuses plunged deeper into beggary while priests ascended on pedestals of fabricated piety. The sad irony that you clash over ceremonies designed to harmonize the mortal with the immortal, yet it fractures you into revered and reviled, heavier than the pylon's shadows that stretch across the stones like condemning arms directed solely at you, the sun's rays spearing through the haze to illuminate your abasement, transforming your exposed skin into a chart of crimson torment that pulses with every pulse. The sensory assault merging sun's inferno with scorn's blaze into a vertiginous blaze where breaths abbreviate and shallow to evade inhaling their sanctified superiority. The high priest orbits you closer, his robe grazing your arm like a calculated affront, the touch scorching your pride as he enumerates more failures, a crease misaligned, and not too lax their voices a harmonious condemnation that weighs heavier than the obelisk's looming. Society elevating these robed oracles as conduits to the gods, while you wallow in the mire of mockery. The injustice a yoke that bows your spirit lower than your lowered gaze over this ordeal. Empathy clashing with indignation for these priests who never grapple the decay, yet assert dominance over the rights you bleed for. The shocking grief swelling as you glimpse a true lapse, a shifted scarab amulet from the family's rough probe now fuel in their pyre. Pain piercing your essence as they mandate atonement. A slash in your wages or added toil in the natron vats, stinging hotter than any corporeal wound. Your status assuring obedience without recourse, heavier than the mummy's linen that now appears to droop under the burden of their critique. The sun's heat pressing like celestial disapproval, mutating the courtyard into a theatre where your clash enacts for eternity's spectators. Society's hierarchy inscribed in every scorching beam. An absurd historical tidbit blazes through the furnace priest's occasionally mended perceived botches with supplemental chants, levying fees on kin for the remedy, while embalmers shouldered the fault, a scheme that enriched shrines at your cost. The scorn now a barrage that leaves you staggering, palms perspiring anew under the wet wool's crust, mutating unease into a slick burn that heightens the sting's phantom agony. Sarcasm scorching your inner dialogue like the sun itself, celestial peer review, where the deity's spokesmen quibble your opus like picky gourmands at a banquet they didn't prepare, worse than virtual trolls in some digital domain, where at least you can mute the heat, not endure blistering under this unyielding solar tribunal, and yet, beneath it, a psychological chill creeps despite the blaze, as if the scribe's bay observes from the mummy, appraising your retort. Empathy, a subdued underflow for the deceased ensnared in this mortal fray. The sad facet deepening as you genuflect to repair the rift under their vigilant stares. Fingers fumbling with linen that rasps against burns. Pain lancing like fresh scorpion tails. The sun's heat pressing like divine censure, mutating the courtyard into a stage where clashes forge legends but char the participants. Society's hierarchy etched in every scorching ray. In a zoom-out poetic interlude, you perceive Karnak's immense columns as colossal guardians to human hubris, priests and embalmers mere ephemera clashing in the god's apathetic umbra. The Nile's remote shimmer a derisive queue of currents that bear away disputes, but leave scars baked in. Winds through hyperstyle halls sighing like dirges from the disregarded, the silence between rebukes a canvas for divine apathy, the high priest gestures grudging sanction eventually, but his scorn endures like heat haze, burning hotter than the sun's decline, a factual resonance of rites where amendments necessitated tributes you can't furnish, your status weight pulverizing as you ascend, skin pulsating from exposure, the humidity's haze dissipating but leaving the air dense with unresolved fire. A modern comparison burns like the rays. It's like a tenure review from scholars who never feel the data, where critique scorches without salve, worse than boardroom rebukes where at least climate control tempers the sting, not this open kiln where scorn sears the essence. You haul the mummy forth, the priest's receding robes a white blur in the glare, but their scorn throbs on, hotter than the midday sun that inscribes burns into your exposed skin. The courtyard's pylons, a strange visual image of towering apathy, their reliefs swirling like flames in the heat warp, sending a mood shift of charred fortitude that questions if these clashes temper your soul or simply incinerate it beyond salvage in this perpetual kiln of rite and rancour. As the moon hangs low over the Nile's gentle ripple, its silver light softening the edges of the world you once navigated with such weary determination, you feel the weight of the day's trials easing from your shoulders like sand slipping through open fingers, the distant croak of frogs and the soft lap of water against the reeds lulling your senses into a quiet surrender, where the echoes of spectral visions and priestly scorn fade into the night's embracing hush. The torchlight in your memory dims gradually, its warm flicker retreating to a mere glow on the horizon of your thoughts, leaving behind only the faint warmth of embers that no longer burn but comfort, as if the gods themselves are drawing a veil over the chaos, allowing the stars to sprinkle their tranquil dust upon your upturned face. Your breath slows, deepening into a rhythm that mirrors the river's eternal flow, each inhale drawing in the cool, jasmine-scented breeze that whispers through the palm fronds, carrying away the stings of flies and the bites of betrayal on wings too soft to disturb the peace settling over you. The workshop's cluttered piles dissolve into vague shapes, mere silhouettes against the encroaching darkness, their once menacing forms now harmless as forgotten dreams, while the wet wool of your tunic dries at last, its cling loosening into a gentle drape that cradles rather than confines, the humidity lifting like a mist rising to join the clouds. Slowly, the shadows of the Panefa stretch and yawn, emptying the halls of their ancient burdens, the silent chairs in the priest's chambers standing vacant as if awaiting no one, the oppressive heat cooling into a balm that soothes your inflamed skin, inviting you to release the grip on the obsidian blade, the linen strips, the endless quests under moonlit markets. Let your eyelids grow heavy, the world's sharp edges blurring into softness. The Niles murmur a lullaby that carries you downstream toward oblivion's welcoming arms, where no more accusations echo, no swarms buzz, only the vast, starlit quiet enveloping you completely. And in this fading whisper, rest comes at last.